Hi everybody, I'm Michael. This is a 5-minute review for Nancy Drew Secrets Can Kill. It's the first Nancy Drew game, and you can kind of tell they weren't sure what they were doing because it's got a lot of stuff which is not in any of the other Nancy Drew games. So we've got cartoon characters instead of computer characters. I thought the animation was fine. I actually like the characters in this game and the way they look. But that is something that's totally different. The puzzles are rather violent for this series. Like the final puzzle to stop the culprit, you have to use a gun on the culprit. And to get inside the teacher's lounge, Nancy needs to use a glass cutter to break open the window and get inside the building. In the teacher's lounge! How did nobody notice that? And it's weird because the school is allegedly filled with all sorts of cops and all sorts of people, but really there's only 3 characters that we can meet. That's something which is strange too. I like the characters, but they never interact with each other. The conversations get cut off halfway through. So you'll be talking to somebody and they'll say, I gotta go now, later, even though there are 3 conversation options that you haven't picked yet. And then you just talk to them again and they act like nothing just happened. It's strange. The conversations are generally not conversations. It's mostly Nancy just asking questions of people. It doesn't feel like a real natural conversation. So the premise is that Jake Rogers has been murdered in the high school. Nancy needs to figure out who did it. There's a lot of brain teasers in this game. That's like 90% of the gameplay is solving brain teasers and word puzzles, which are just all over the walls. And that's something they don't do in other Nancy Drew games. For good reason. Like, the brain teasers are fun to solve the first time around, but not the second time around. If you already know the brain teasers, then there's no reason to do them again. It really destroys the game's replay value. Also, if you get stuck on a particular brain teaser, no hints whatsoever. If you miss a particular one, well, you're gonna be stuck. I think the one most people get stuck on is the brain teaser, which is Jake's locker combo is part of his name, which means his locker combo is 5253, because those are those letters and numbers on a phone. There's also a hint about that when you call Nancy's friends, but those phone calls are useless. Nancy's friends do not help at all. Another weird thing about this game is we have locations that just are underutilized. So the end of the game thing happens at a drug depot, a drug pharmacy. That's the only time it's used. It's kind of a useless location. Something else that makes this game different from the others, it's got 2 CDs, so you're constantly switching through CDs. We've got Aunt Eloise's house, which is a nice location, but it's definitely an underutilized location. You've got a slider puzzle there, and a puzzle to get a key, and I think that's it. Oh, you also use it to watch a videotape. So what Nancy needs to do is, basically she goes through the school and she finds evidence relating to the 3 characters. Hulk Sanchez, he's a football star who's secretly taking drugs to cover up the fact that he was hurt. Hulk is an okay character. Connie, she's secretly a judo champion, which is awesome. I love that. And Hal Tanaka is a Japanese exchange student. He plagiarized an essay because he was in danger of failing. So it turns out that all of these students were being blackmailed. And once Nancy gets the evidence about them, she gets a letter from the culprit luring her into a trap in the boiler room, a very easily escaped trap, and there conveniently happens to be that blackmail tape right there. So Nancy sees the blackmail tape, learns about the blackmail, and turns out Daryl Gray, he's Nancy's police contact. He works at this cool what is it called? Diner named Maxine's, which is a really cool location. I really like it, and I think Daryl's an interesting character. He's kind of fun, and he's kind of flirty. I do think he's good. And Daryl just says, oh, hey, Nancy, Mitch Dillon is the culprit. Who's Mitch Dillon? Has he ever been mentioned before? No, he hasn't. Culprit is a random guy who was never mentioned before, but he's the person that Daryl was selling drugs for. So Daryl knew who the culprit was all along. He could have said something, but he didn't. There's also a puzzle in Maxine's where you have to change, where the place will explode unless you put a soup ladle in the right spot to replace a pair of bolt cutters, which is another weird puzzle. Running up on my 5-minute time limit here. What do I think of the game? It's an okay game. I actually kind of like replaying it, but it's got a lot of weird stuff, and it doesn't really fit in with the rest of Nancy Drew games. I can overlook that because it's a first game. It's their first attempt. They're still trying to figure out what they're doing. How do you actually make a video game out of a book like that? So it's also very short, too. So I'd say it's an okay game. I'd give it like a 6 out of 10. That's what my rating is. Hi everybody, I'm Michael. This is a 5-minute review for Nancy Drew. Stay tuned for Danger. It's the second game in the Nancy Drew series. I think this is a really good game. It is way better than the first game, and it feels more like something from the Nancy Drew series. So in game number 20, they wanted to reach back and start with the first culprit Nancy Drew ever fought. They went to this game. They went to game number 2 instead of game number 1. And I think that was a good choice because the culprit in this game is particularly memorable. This game just feels more like a Nancy Drew game, to be honest, than the first one. The first one was okay. This one is so much better. You have a great sense of actually solving a mystery and exploring, because you can visit every location twice, really, during the daytime and in the dark. And that's good. I really like the big locations that you can explore, but there are also problems with that as well. It makes it really easy to overlook important things, because there's a lot of things you can look at, but they're not important to the mystery. Case in point, the prop room. So many different screens that you can look at, but there's only really 2 things there. The rest are just fun things to look at. Another case in point, it's really hard to know what the things you're supposed to look at are in Dwayne Powers' office at nighttime. I think there are like 2 or 3 papers that you specifically need to look at, and I didn't know what they were, and I got lost, and I got confused. I think there's also some papers in Lillian's office that you need to look at, so I'm one of many players who got super stuck, because you need to look at this one specific thing, but it's not obvious that it's important, and it's not super relevant to the storyline. Like, Dwayne has 3 papers in his briefcase. They're all basically the same thing. You could miss one of them. I think it would be fine. I think the game should have let you do that. And another thing that a lot of people get really stuck on, besides for triggering the end of the game there, is also there's a box which appears on Maddie's doorstep. I mean, that table thing. And then if Nancy doesn't see the box and watch the video inside, game comes to a screeching halt. Also, there's like a chocolate thing with the chocolate's phone number, which is really hard to trigger as well. I don't think I've ever been able to do that. Anyway, that's a big problem with this game. We've got, it's too easy to get stuck, and that's going to cost the game some points, in my opinion. I'm going to give it an 8 out of 10, by the way. That's my score for this game. I really do like the game. I like the characters. The characters are fantastic. I wish we got to see more of the characters, to be honest. This game just has so many different characters, and I think that's great. I wish that they showed up more. Like, a lot of them only show up like once. Like Bill Papas, you only have one conversation with him. The prop room lady, she really only shows up at the beginning, and she has a conversation which is just brain teasers, but she's a lot of fun. I like her too. Maddie, for whatever reason, Maddie sort of gets up and leaves whenever you talk to her. So like the first 4 conversations you have with Maddie, she gets up and just leaves the room, which is weird. But it's sort of a strange balance, because the game wants Maddie to be there so you can talk to her, but they also want her gone so you can explore her area. And the game never seemed to really fit that balance. I think it would have been better if, say, Maddie's always at her house during daytime and she's not at her house at nighttime. This game has more of a story than the previous one. There's a set structure, which is great. So Nancy goes to the soap opera. Rick Arlen, that's the premise. Rick Arlen is daytime's cutest hunk. He's kind of a sleazeball. He almost gets killed when they're filming a scene for the soap opera, and it's a hilarious scene. His acting is so bad. I like that, and I really like the soap opera thing at the very end of the game, where the culprit thinks real life is a soap opera and goes crazy and tries to murder everyone. That was super dramatic. I loved how the culprit just you really could tell the culprit believes it's a soap opera, and that's why I like the soap opera setting. Let's see, the culprit also leaves a bomb in Rick's room. Nancy needs to defuse the bomb, and then she has to sort of explore the entire studio at night and explore Dwayne's office at night. So she basically explores everywhere at night. The studio's a pretty large location, too. Oh no, I'm up on 4 minutes. Okay, is there anything I'm forgetting? I like the structure of the game. I do like how it's a story that goes forward. I like how at the end of the game you get a chance to accuse anyone you want of being the culprit, and you can pick a motive for them too. I think that's really neat. I wish they sort of brought that back in other Nancy Drew games. I think the final puzzle of the game is too hard, where you just have to pick a random series of like eight eight buttons. You need to press 8 buttons in a specific order. Meanwhile, the alarm's going brah, brah, brah the whole time. And if the culprit kills you, oh my gosh, it is such a creepy ending, but it's still super satisfying when you solve the final puzzle. All in all, great game. One of my favorites. I tend to think of this as the first game in the Nancy Drew series, sort of overlooking Secrets Can Kill. Sorry, Secrets Can Kill, but Stay Tuned for Danger is so much better. And I also like Maddie too. Bye! Hi everybody, I'm Michael. This is a 5-minute review for Nancy Drew number 3, Message in a Haunted Mansion. And I'm finding that I'm having trouble structuring these reviews because I want to talk about everything at once, but I've only got 5 minutes to talk about things that... And then, something just fell on me. And I feel like I'm missing some things. Like in my previous review for Stay Tuned for Danger, I didn't even mention Dwayne Powers, who's one of my favorite characters of all time. I can't believe it. So I'm going to try to do more structured. Let's start with story, characters. With this particular game, I really love the setting. All these various rooms look different, and they're great. The story is that Nancy's helping Rose Green fix this Victorian mansion. It turns out that whoever owned this mansion previously, Lizzie Valdez, set up this really complicated series of puzzles, which is super cool, leading to stolen gold, and that's also super cool too. Let's see, and this game has a set structure just like the previous game, so that's really good. Nancy needs to go to Rose, and, like a third of the way through the game, we have the seance, and that's really cool, where Abby talks to the ghost of Valdez, and we have so many scares in this game. It's great. We have, like, the ghost wandering the hallways, and we see shadows everywhere, and there's a creepy voice that goes, "I see you." That's just so creepy. I love all those little touches. I can't believe they didn't do that in more Nancy Drew games. They do it again in Ghost of Thornton Hall, but it's really great in this game. Yeah. Charlie is okay. I think Charlie is the worst character of the game, to be honest. He doesn't really do anything. He just hangs out in the basement, and you need to get rid of Charlie in order to find the key to the attic. The key to the attic is in a cash register. What a weird place to put it. I also feel kind of bad for Charlie because he doesn't get explained at the end of the game. It turns out that Charlie is homeless and he's secretly living inside the house. We never find out what happens to him afterwards. Poor Charlie. Oh, Louis Chandler, he's the antiques dealer. I like his voice, but I don't like him personally. He's kind of a mean person. Nancy needs to find 3 tiles so she can spy on Louis, which is cool. She has to do chores, like a series of 3 chores, not that many chores, but yeah, I thought the chores were okay, except for the Phoenix tile puzzle. That was a terrible puzzle. Oh my gosh. And that just brings me to the end of the game, which is a big problem with the game, is that terrible end game puzzle where Nancy needs to press 10 different Chinese symbols in a specific order. And the game does not prepare you for this at all. So you basically have to go through every single screen of the game again in order to find all these symbols and write them down. Nancy has a notebook in this game. If those symbols had been written in her notebook, that would have been great. But no, you actually have to write this out down on a separate piece of paper, or just look up the solution on the internet. I did like when we got to go into the attic and explore there. That was really cool. I liked exploring the attic. This game, Nancy has an alarm clock, so she can go to any time of day. And the idea is that the characters are there at certain times of day, and other times they're not. I like exploring Abby's area when she's not there, because it turns out that Abby is faking all these hauntings, and we find out how she does it with various cameras and boom boxes and things like that. I thought that was really cool. Abby is probably my favorite character in the game. She's like so silly and mysterious, but I really like the seance too. Also the fire. The fire is like 2/3 of the way through the game, and also the message in a haunted mansion is super scary. It gets slipped in underneath Nancy's drawer. Terrifying. Oh my gosh, I love that. Rose is an okay character too. People like to make fun of her animation because her head tilts to the left a bit too often. But yeah, I think she's fine. Nancy has to call Hannah in this game. Hannah is Hannah Gruen, so she is Nancy's housekeeper who never appears in any of the other games. This is the only one. So I think it's really nice that we get Hannah in this game. Bess and George were good in this game. You have to call Emily Foxworthy. And who's that? She doesn't get introduced. You get the sense that she's she's a photographer and she's an expert on San Francisco. The game does have some educational stuff about San Francisco. The endgame puzzle sequence. There's way more to the endgame puzzle sequence. You have to press all the symbols of the zodiac, and then you have a puzzle flipping the tiles, and then you have a slider puzzle, which gives you a phoenix eye, which you put inside an actual phoenix statue, and that reveals where the gold is hidden. And the culprit knocks Nancy out. And then we've got a final puzzle. Nancy needs to go up a particular staircase to drop a chandelier on the culprit's head, which seems extremely violent. I'm surprised that actually happened there. I think that's everything I have to say. Overall, I'd give this game a 9 out of 10. I would give it a perfect score because it's a fantastic game, except for that final puzzle. I do like how they had a series of 5 puzzles at the end, but that Chinese symbol puzzle just always gets me every single time. So 9 out of 10, that's really the only thing that's holding this game back, in my opinion, from being like super perfect fantastic. Hey everybody, I'm Arglefump. This is a 5-minute review for game number 4 in the Nancy Drew series, which is Treasure in the Royal Tower, which is a fantastic game. It is a fan favorite game. I thought I had it here, but I guess... Oh, there it is! Hey, Treasure in the Royal Tower! What do you know? So this is one of the best games in the Nancy Drew series. Definitely, yeah, 10 out of 10. Okay, so the premise is that Nancy's on vacation in this tower. She's on vacation in this castle, and it's a really cool location that you get to explore. Really large location, too. And you have all sorts of characters. The characters are really a highlight. I like Professor Hotchkiss. She's hilarious. You see her in several Nancy Drew games, like 3 or 4. She's so much fun. They kept bringing her back. I really like Dexter, who's the grumpy old guy, but you learn about his dramatic backstory. And, you know, he used to be in jail, and he was disowned by Ezra Wickford, who owned this castle. But Ezra actually had a change of heart and realized he loved his adopted son. It's really nice to learn more, because Nancy just goes... I know you could say, oh boy, there's Nancy butting into people's private lives again, but I thought it was really sweet how she helps Dexter realize, oh, you know, your adopted dad, he still loved you after all. That was nice. And she kind of breaks down his barriers. Like halfway through the game, he stops being so angry and grumpy. I like how he gives you chores at the start of the game, and I know that's a weird thing to say because I'm usually not a big fan of chores in these games, but I think that was very well done because it gives players a chance to explore this place and meet all the characters, really get you acclimated to where things are in this game. And I really think there's a clever setup. It's like once those chores are done, the elevator stops and Nancy has to climb up through the elevator, and that lets her see that there's this vent in this ladder in the elevator shaft, and so she can climb up the ladder and through the vent and into the forbidden library, which is locked. And there's kind of a cool puzzle there to figure out. I mean, there's a puzzle to avoid Dexter and a puzzle to figure out the alarm code. And the clue to that is actually in Nancy's room. And I like how there's actually a clue to that puzzle, because that puzzle would have been impossible to solve if not. And then, like, it just so smart that now you can move the elevator and go through the elevator shaft library vent backwards to reach the tower, which belonged to Marie Antoinette. And I do like how the tower is blocked off by a series of puzzles. That makes sense. Like there's a chain puzzle and there's a slider puzzle, and there are multiple. There's like a, what do you call them? Jigsaw puzzle inside where you have to change the gold leaves. That puzzle's kind of a pain, but it gives you Marie Antoinette's journal. Professor Hotchkiss, you also have to solve some puzzles for Professor Hotchkiss as well. She's just so hilarious. Did I say she's funny? She is super duper funny. That's probably why I like the chore run so much, and that's why everybody loves it. But you do some chores for Professor Hotchkiss, and she makes you her apprentice. And like basically this game is structured sort of like the previous game, so there's a distinct, you know, beginning, middle, and end, and I like that. So I'd say about halfway through, when Nancy finds the tower, she finds somebody trying to break into the tower, and the story changes to Nancy needs to find the 3 medallions so she can get this fantastic diamond inside the tower. I think that's really cool. It works well. Like the first half of the game, get to the tower. Second half of the game, okay, get the 3 medallions. And that's something we'll see in a lot of other Nancy Drew games where it's like you need to find the 3 things, or you need to find the 6 keys for Secret of the Scarlet Hand. You know, the other characters, Jacques, I feel like more could have been done with the other 2 characters in the game. So Jacques Brunet is supposed to be handsome and French. I feel like there's not much that's done with him, though. He could have, there could have been a lot more with him. About like halfway through the game, he gets mad at Nancy and refuses to talk to her ever again. There's sort of a storyline going on with his fiance. I feel like that could have been, they could have done more with that, and the story of him having hope boxes, which sort of went nowhere. Similarly, we've got Lisa, Ostrom, who people think she has an annoying voice. I think it's okay, but it is kind of annoying. They kind of have a story with her going on that she's lying about knowing multiple languages, and what happens with that? That kind of goes nowhere. And so what does she do in this game? Well, she gossips about the library at the start, and then she tells Nancy, oh, I saw Dexter heading out to the secret shed area with the medallion, and she does that in like the second half of the game, and that's it for Lisa. So I feel like they really could have done more with Lisa and Jacques. Those are the two underused characters. I really like the puzzles in this game. I said we've got a bunch of puzzles. The characters are fantastic. The setting's fantastic. Basically, I have no complaints about this game, and so I'm giving it, like a perfect 10 out of 10. That would be my rating for this game. It is super fantastic. One of the best Nancy Drew games ever. Yeah. If I had to say there's something in this game which could be improved, it's sort of the navigation. You can easily get lost, and I would put Nancy's room number on her room key, making it way easier to remember which room she is, because I always kind of forget. Is she in room 409? Is she in room 412? But that's a minor nitpick. It's not that big of a deal. Hey everybody, I'm Michael. This is a 5-minute review for Nancy Drew, The Final Scene, which is game number 5 in the Nancy Drew series, and this is another game which I think is a fantastic one. I would give it a 10 out of 10, although I liked Treasure in the Royal Tower, game number 4, slightly more, because this game has really long phone conversations, and I think that's sort of what brings it down. A lot of long conversations that you have to sit through, especially with Sergeant Mac Ramsey. He's a funny character. It's interesting to talk to him, but there are no conversation options in that conversation. You just have to sit and listen to him talk for about 3 to 5 minutes. It would have been a lot better if Nancy could if you could pick your conversation options and have different conversations. I think that would have been better. Also, long phone calls, Sherman Trout. A lot of people like him. I think he's kind of boring. I know he's boring on purpose, but I still don't like that. Also, Eustacia Andropov. Long phone conversation with her. Funny though. She is a pretty funny character, which is interesting because she keeps telling jokes about how she's old and she's going to die soon, and that's basically all she says over and over and over again. It's still funny. It's very dark, but it's also funny. I like this game. It's structured. We've got 3 different days of the game. I really like how it's structured. The fact that we only have 3 days left to save Maya. So the story is that Nancy has a reporter friend named Maya, and she's kidnapped, and this theater is going to be demolished in 3 days. The culprit says, hey, if you don't call off the demolition, I'm going to murder Maya. Just straight up, the culprit threatens Nancy at the start of the game, which is super intense. And the fact that we have a ticking clock just makes it all the more intense. Nancy responds to this intensity. Just all of her dialogue seems like scared and panicked and angry, especially her dialogue with Simone Mueller, who is a mean Hollywood agent. I love their back and forth. They're so mean to each other. And I know it's weird to say, I like it when Nancy Drew is mean, but that's true. I love the passion and the energy that the voice cast brings to it. Really helps you get this sense that, oh no, Maya is going to die. Other characters in this game, Joseph, he's a really nice guy who works in the projector booth and tries to help Nancy out. Nicholas Falcone, he's also trying to stop the destruction of the theater. He's really funny too. I mean, this is a funny game. They do have a lot of funny moments, especially the press conference that is called during the second day of the game. That's hilarious. Also, Brady Armstrong is an actor, and it's funny to see his backstory, where, he used to dress up in a chicken suit and wear a curly wig, and he used to have a ponytail, and he really wishes he could have his ponytail back, but Simone made him cut it off, and now he's really mad about it. It's just, I love how we go into Brady's backstory like that. That's good. So the first day of the game, Nancy basically explores the theater, solves a couple of puzzles, and finds a piece of paper which indicates that Harry Houdini was the part-time owner of the theater. That triggers the discovery of Maya's press pass. Second day of the game, Nancy explores the theater again. She finds a secret room underneath the stage. The magician's room, solves puzzles to get inside. She sees that Maya's being held hostage there, but by the time Nancy gets there, Maya's gone. The culprit moved her and then set up like an electric fence to destroy Nancy, which is super intense. It is very intense. And then the third day of the game is Demolition Day, and nobody believes Nancy anymore. Nobody believes that Maya's still in the building. It's like, how could you risk her life like that? You really feel Nancy's desperation in not being believed. And then there's this really, I don't want to go into spoilers, so I won't say that. But at the very end, Nancy has to hide from the police so she can continue exploring for an extra 5 minutes. And that's when the culprit appears, and it is a really creepy culprit confrontation. It's not at all like game number 2, where the culprit is just over the top and screaming. It's like, real life is a soap opera, Miss Drew. No, this is just way underplayed, and that just makes it all the more creepy. It's like the culprit is totally in denial about what's going to happen, totally fine with murdering Nancy. Nancy has to go upstairs and to the ice room because there's another hidden area. So Maya's trapped inside. She has a puzzle. She has to throw something in the culprit's face so she can turn on the marquee, letting people know that, hey, we're inside here. It's a really intense ending because the timer in the corner of the game changes to a literal ticking clock. So it really makes it very intense. And then the ending scenes are great. They're all really funny. Like, okay, Nicholas Falcone has to become friends with Brady. And there's this Brady, he's like, yeah. And Nick is just like, what are you doing? Don't touch me. I don't like you. It's so hilarious. I'm at 5 minutes. Okay, did I give a score? If I didn't, 10 out of 10, but I still think Treasure in the Royal Tower slightly better. That's how I would put it in the ranking. Still a very excellent game. Hi everybody, I'm Michael. This is a 5-minute review for Nancy Drew number 6, Secret of the Scarlet Hand. This is a game where Nancy is an intern at a museum in Washington, D.C. This game did not make much of the Washington, D.C. location. I really do like how the map is the Washington, D.C. metro, but they really could have had more. Like, this could have taken place in any city, and the game would be pretty much exactly the same. So that's kind of a downer. They're having this big Mayan exhibit. Specifically, like, we have this Pakal piece and a big monolith. And it's okay. We start off with Nancy doing chores where she has to meet everybody and learn where things are. And that's fine. I like the characters in this game. Taylor Sinclair is fantastic. I love him. The other characters aren't so good, though, actually. I mean, they're not bad. It's just I don't think any of them are particularly interesting. So Henrik's fine. Actually, I like him. Alejandro, he's basically there to be good looking and to ask for documents about the Pakal carving. That's basically what he does. So we talked to him once at the beginning of the game, and like in the second half of the game, he just wants more documents. He basically blackmails Nancy into giving him documents, which is not nice. Joanna Riggs is Nancy's boss, and she's okay. I like her design. She sort of disappears for the second half of the game, and so does Henrik. That's one of my problems with the game. Like, second half, last third, somewhere around there, the game just becomes terrible as all of the characters leave. Nancy's left alone. She's put in charge of the entire museum because there's literally nobody else there. And then what do? A bunch of phone calls. That's what we do. Nancy's supposed to get six different pieces in order to form a key which opens up the monolith. And inside she finds this very valuable, that's the end of the game. The culprit attacks her there and tries to lock her in the monolith while stealing these very valuable ancient Mayan records. And it's really cool how all these things come together, but it requires a lot of phone calls, and I don't like that. We've got a lot of long, slow phone calls with Franklin Rose. I don't particularly care for him that much. Prudence Rutherford's funny. Poppy Dada is also funny. We have Poppy Dada's father. I don't think he's funny. Sheila from Chaco Canyon Cultural Center is interesting. You have to call her twice, I believe. But yeah, that's like 5-minute phone calls that you do just all in one group at this end of the game because there's nothing else you can do because there's nobody else to talk to. You can kind of intersperse it with a puzzle. Henrik gets like thrown down a tower. It's never explained, did he fall or if he was pushed? And he gets amnesia, and so you need to find a bunch of things to help trigger his memory. And that's kind of cool. You also like go through the entire pyramid. So there's a pyramid inside this game. And it's got 3 different levels, and each level has a bunch of different puzzles. And this gets to the thing that I don't like so much about this game is it's an educational game. It's fine that the game has an educational aspect, but with this one, you are just constantly running back and forth between all of the various exhibits to do everything. I did learn stuff. I learned the Maya numbering system, and that's cool. But like doing the numbering exhibits, actually that one's fine. But unless you're taking notes or pictures with your phone, you're going to go back and forth between the notes in Nancy's room and then the actual numbering exhibit. And then there's the headphones thing where you have to constantly go back and forth between every single exhibit. That's a huge pain. And when I was talking about the temple earlier, so like you've got at least 6 different things on each level of the temple that require you to go back and go through every single thing in the museum again. So like trivia questions are the Maya glyphs. And just you're supposed to memorize them. There's like a big matching puzzle with the Mayan glyphs, and it's like, oh my gosh, was I supposed to be taking notes and draw every single glyph in the entire game? That's so I don't really like that particular aspect of the game so much. Another problem with those phone calls is that you can only make some phone calls from certain areas. So Nancy can only call Franklin Rose from inside the museum, and she can only call Poppy Dada from her hotel room. So you kind of have to go back and forth between the hotel room and the phone inside, and that's kind of a huge pain. This game introduces Sunny June, which is funny. He's a great character. Also introduces Coco Kringles, which is great too. Taylor Sinclair's office, you have to, like, he's got these disgusting cookies from Oaxaca, and you have to put it on a painting, which is always a fun puzzle. There's a lot of fun lines in this game. I think Joanna has some fun ones, like she's like, oh no, what's gonna happen next? Oh, I forgot to mention, halfway through the game, the museum gets robbed. The culprit leaves a Scarlet handprint at the crime scene, and that's a big investigation there, is to figure out where just to figure out, you know, whose hand it is, and then where the stolen carving is, and that ties back into Henrik's story, and I'm out of time. So, thank you very much. Did I get my score? I forgot if I get the score. Anyway, 8 out of 10? 8 out of 10, so I'd rate this slightly below game number 3, but above game number 2. I like game number 2 more, but this is, like, sort of objectively a better game than game number 2. So they're sort of tied, in my opinion. Hi everybody, Over-Caffeinated Michael here with a 5-minute review for Nancy Drew number 7, Ghost Dogs in Moon Lake. I know a lot of people love this game, but I'm gonna be honest, don't like this game. I think it's kind of a bad game. Probably the worst of the first 10 games in the series, if we exclude game number 1, which is its own beast. But this game feels like they needed another 6 months to complete this game. That's what it feels like, because it feels like it's got just 2 completely unrelated games, and they don't match, and neither one is particularly fun. You might have noticed this game only has 3 characters, and that really drives the game down, because we've got these 3 characters, and they're really separated from each other. They don't interact with each other. I know that happens in a lot of Nancy Drew games, where we've got the characters, but it feels like they're just totally just gone and not dealing with each other. Red Knot is, Red Knot, I like him best. He's just this crazy bird guy who's mean all the time. He's probably the best of the characters, but the first half of the game is just doing this guy's chores. He makes you take a bunch of pictures of birds, and then and that's really terrible. Like, the first half of the game is mostly chores, wandering through the woods, trying to get the pictures of birds. And you have to get the 10 little critters, or dozen little critters, sorry. So 12 of these things, you have to go through every single spot in the woods. Then you switch to nighttime and go through every single spot in the woods again. Switch to daytime, that gives you camouflage gear. So now you can go through every spot in the woods again to get pictures of birds. And it's just, okay, you have to wander through the woods 3 or 4 times completely. Another time you have to wander through the woods is to get these logs. You need to find 3 of these logs and to solve a puzzle inside the house, which leads us sort of to the second half of the game. Another thing that sort of separates the 2 halves of the game is once Nancy gets all the bird pictures, the culprit knocks her out, locks her inside a shed, and that was a really cool action sequence. I wish, like, the entire game had cool stuff like that, or maybe another action sequence like that. The Ghost Dogs of Moon Lake show up in, like, the first minute or so of the game. They show up, they attack the house, and then they never appear again, which is a shame. I wish the Ghost Dogs had reappeared. There's a really scary opening to the game, but they're just completely absent from the rest of the game. And, let's see, Ranger Akers, he's... like, the story is that he's very nitpicky, and that's basically it. And then Emily, she's okay, but she tries to be your friend and help you, but she doesn't really help you all that much. She's fine. I like her. And in the second half of the game, Nancy finds like this journal belonging to one of Mickey Malone's associates. So we learn, hey, Mickey Malone is a guy. He owned the house here. He stole a bunch of gold, and he had a secret tavern hidden here at Moon Lake. And that's the second half of the game, is to find it. Find this place. And so Nancy has to do phone calls with Vivian Whitmore, which I thought were interesting, okay. And she's got a puzzle to fix, like the fish display at Emily's, in order to get batteries for her flashlight, so she can go through the graveyard and reach this hidden area. And it's actually really cool. I do like the puzzle setup in this area, and we have to find the locations of the ghost dogs. That's fine, it works. But I mean, again, sort of like the first half of the game, this is Nancy doing puzzles all by herself. Really, I don't think the other characters are involved. Poor Red Knot sort of disappears in the second half of the game, and so does Emily. I mean, besides for that puzzle to get the batteries. But yeah, it feels like the two halves of the game don't match. Like, doing chores for the bird watcher doesn't have anything to do with finding the lost dogs in the lost saloon. And the puzzles are good. If you pay attention, you can figure out who the culprit is. The game really does telegraph who the culprit is once you find the culprit's hideout, which is fine. I think that's good. Couple of good puzzles. I wouldn't say the puzzles are perfect, but decent enough puzzles at the end of the game. I think that's good too. What can I say? I just don't like this game. Like, half of it is chores, and just doesn't. It feels like like I said, it feels like it needs like 6 months, and none of the characters really interacted much. I wish there had been another character, or if Sally had been there, or I don't know what could be done to improve this game. Not running around in the woods all the time would be nice. Giving Red Knot something to do. Say Red Knot has a storyline with Ranger Acres. Boom! How about that? Why don't those two characters ever interact? Ever! Gosh, having the ghost dogs appear again? It's not one of my favorite games. I give it like a 6 out of 10, so that would put it on par with game number 1, in my opinion. I feel like, I'm sorry, I know this is going to upset a lot of people, but I really just do not like Ghost Dogs of Moon Lake. It's got some good moments, but overall it's definitely like my least favorite of like that set of games in the series. Hi everybody, I'm Michael. This is a 5-minute review for Nancy Drew number 8. The Haunted Carousel, which is one of my favorite games. This is the first game in the Nancy Drew series that I personally played, and it's great. I feel like if I had started the series with Ghost Dogs of Moon Lake or Secrets Can Kill, I wouldn't have played another game from the series. I probably would have stopped halfway through and just rage quit. But this was my first one, and it's a great introductory game because it's really easy, and it just has a lot of fun characters and fun conversations. I love the setting. It's so bright and colorful. You have so many different places to go, as opposed to Moon Lake, the previous game, where you've got like 3 places to go, and they're all kind of boring. But this one has a lot of fun, vibrant colors. I really like that. So, like, you can do stuff on the carousel. You need to fix the carousel. That's cool. And you can grab the brass ring, which is a nice puzzle. You have the puzzles in the midway. You go to the roller coaster, and Nancy gets trapped. Wow, that's really cool. They could have done more with the haunted ride. That basically comes into play at the end of the game. The haunted house. I wish there had been more to the haunted house. There is a scene where Nancy almost gets hit by a giant fish. So there's a death scene there too, but I don't think that's as cool as the roller coaster one. So the premise of the game is that somebody stole a carousel from the horse, stole a carousel horse, and now people think it's haunted, the park is cursed, and the park's been shut down, and so Nancy's here to basically solve the mystery. Another big part of the game is figuring out what's going on with Joy Trent, and I really like that. It's definitely great. Joy Trent is the park's like manager, and her father died, and he left her this robot, a memory robot. It's called Miles, the Magnificent Memory Machine. He's just such a fun character. I love him, and he gives you puzzles. He's got a bunch of riddle puzzles for Nancy to solve, and they all sort of relate to Joy and her memory, because he's trying to remind her of her past, the happy time she had when she went to the park with her mom before her mom died. It's really emotional, but it's also puzzle solving. It's great. I really like it. The characters in this game are really good. Lots of phone call characters, which are all pretty much fun. They're good. Other characters are fun too. Elliot Chen, he's the parts art director, who's just this really silly guy who helps you out with the notes. He's cool. Harlan Bishop is the Nancy's security guard friend, and you really feel like they're friends. And so there's a dramatic moment where Nancy realizes, well, he used to be, he's an ex-con, and he's actually spying on one of the other workers, and she tells the boss about him, and you can tell that he's hurt by this. It's an emotional moment. I don't like seeing them fight, because I like it much better when they're friends. But yeah, that was dramatic. And the final character, Ingrid, is just weird, and that's her personality, and I feel like it didn't really work that much. She's not a Professor Hotchkiss. They do have, like, oh, here's the goofy character in the Nancy Drew series. They do that with a lot of games, having goofy characters. Ingrid's supposed to be one of them. I don't think it quite works. Turns out she's actually working with the guy who was hurt in the roller coaster too. So that's her secret. Hey, it's one of those Nancy Drew games where pretty much everyone has a secret. Harlan spying on people, Ingrid's working with the opposition or whatever. I think, did the other two characters have secrets? Oh, also, the hotel, the Captain's Quarters Hotel, where you get a fun day Sunday. Great, that's fun. That's a nice puzzle. I really do like all the puzzles in this game, and the setup and the scenery. Nancy's boss is Paula Santos, and she's pretty memorable because she's constantly telling Nancy, that's it, Drew, you're off the case. It's super dramatic. You can also call her friends, Bess and George. That's nice. The Hardy Boys are phone contacts in this game. You don't really have to deal with them. But it's still good, too. I just can't say enough nice things about this game. I really like it. It was my first game, the game I played in the Nancy Drew series. Turns out that the culprit is making forgeries of the horse, and that's why they did the carousel theft. They kind of tie it into a robbery from like 10, 20 years ago. I forget how many years ago. Anyway, there were stolen jewels that were hidden inside the carousel horse, and some of those jewels were never found. And what do you know? Nancy manages to find those lost stolen jewels inside another horse. At the same time, she's solving the mystery of Joy Trent's mother. At the same time, she happens to stumble upon the culprit's lair and figure out who the culprit is. And I like Nancy's computer. We've got a cool email system there. This is not the first game where Nancy sort of has a task list on her computer system, but it's particularly well done here. I do like how Nancy can get emails in this game and in the next game. Just a series of emails from home. I think those are interesting. It's like a little touch, but don't really do it in any of the other Nancy Drew games, which is a shame. Oh, I'm over time. 10 out of 10, fantastic game. I love it to pieces. I will always be down to play this game. Okay, those are my thoughts. Bye! Hi everybody, I'm Michael. This is a review for Nancy Drew number 9, I think. That's the one I'm on. Danger on Deception Island. So, I didn't like this so much the first time I played this game, but it's really grown on me over the years. I do like how this game is set up. I do like the characters and the setting. The setting is very true to life in terms of being the Pacific Northwest. The characters are okay. I'm thinking of Jenna. Not a very good character, kind of useless. She's basically there to force Nancy to... She complains about Katie at the start of the game, and she forces Nancy to do this clam hunting puzzle, and I feel that's basically it. She does nothing. So really a lost opportunity with that character. Andy Jason's kind of a fun character. Whales rule! And he runs this whale world shop, which is a neat place. You get to explore, and you get to play little games there, and you learn educational information about whales, and that part was kind of boring, but it's still cool that you get to go on a whale watching tour. And I like his character design, because he's got like these fake muscles. I don't know. Also, Holt Scotto is my favorite character. I really like Holt. He's this funny, like, angry pirate guy. He forces Nancy to basically solve a quiz. Yeah, it's good. The premise is that Nancy is on vacation. She's with this girl named Katie Firestone who does whale tours, but somebody has trashed her boat. In part because there was this orca that appeared in the channel recently, and the town is just all up in arms about it, and she's the only one who's allowed to go see the orca. She managed to make that deal with the government. Some people aren't so happy about that. So Nancy needs to get a GPS by solving Holt's puzzle, and she just sort of explores the area, and she finds a bunch of notes and bottles. She realizes they're GPS coordinates leading to a hidden beach where she has to solve more puzzles from Hilda Swenson, who's the town's former mayor. I think this is really cool that Hilda makes you solve a series of puzzles. It's sort of like solving a real-life scavenger hunt, and like we need to get an item from all three of the characters, not Katie, the ones who aren't Katie, and all of them have a puzzle. You know, we have to solve a puzzle for each one of them. She puts them together to realize, hey, Nancy needs to put her telephone number from the top of the building, and she gets to talk to Hilda Swenson directly. And there's a few more puzzles that Hilda makes Nancy do before Nancy finds the culprit's hideout. There's also hidden tunnels underneath the entire town. That was really cool to explore. I do like exploring the lighthouse. I just kind of wish that the lighthouse didn't lock. The pathway sort of locks, so you can either be in the hidden tunnels or the lighthouse, but not both. And then every single time you go to the lighthouse, you have to redo all the puzzles, and that's kind of a pain. I mean, it's not that bad to go inside the lighthouse, but still, wish that was something they changed. Turns out the culprits are using the orca to dive underwater and collect things underwater. Basically, it's cargo from a shipwreck. That's another storyline, is Nancy actually needs to figure out what this cargo is. So she finds a piece of driftwood on the beach, and she has to call two really interesting characters, Casey Porterfield, who's kind of this crazy guy who runs the local library, and then there's also Dr. Irina Predovicu, who's a wood expert, and you have to identify a piece of wood for her, and that's also an interesting puzzle. You do have to put a bunch of books away on the shelf, and that puzzle is so hard, and it comes up in so many different Nancy Drew games. Oh my gosh. Overall, I think the puzzles are really good. This game is just a scavenger hunt puzzle. Stay still, game. It's just a scavenger hunt puzzle fest, and that's really fun. I really like the dramatic ending where Nancy realizes she has to go stop the culprits because the whale's making its final dive tonight. So she sneaks onto the culprit's boat, and there's a puzzle where she has to dodge these villains, and then she gets into the room inside the culprit's boat where they have the whale. I don't want to spoil the big plot twist, but it's a really cool plot twist, and Nancy uses the orca to help defeat the culprit. How cool is that? That's really amazing. Yeah, I think that's pretty much everything I have to say about this game. I think it's a good game. The music is fantastic. I really love the music. I think that's one of the major reasons why I really love this game. The puzzle, the game is kind of nitpicky in terms of Nancy always has to put on her helmet to go from location to location. I feel like that's kind of nitpicky, and lots of people just accidentally forget the helmet in a game over sequence. But other than that, really fun game. I really like it a lot. I'd say like a 9 or a 10 out of 10, really. There's not 9 out of 10. There is room for improvement. Jenna, definitely, we need a storyline with Jenna. I feel like another storyline with Katie would be good too. Oh, I forgot to mention the sandwiches. There's a sandwich making challenge and then the pipes puzzle challenge. Those are in Katie's area, and those are fine. People really like it whenever I play the games and I mess up on the sandwich puzzle, which admittedly is kind of funny. If you watch my video walkthrough for the game, you'll notice I died in like the first minute making a bad sandwich. Maybe that's why I don't like this game. Maybe that's what's holding me back from giving this game a 10 out of 10, is because I still have bad memories of failing in the first minutes. Anyway, bye! Hi everybody, I'm Michael. This is a review for Nancy Drew game number 10, The Secret of Shadow Ranch, which is a very popular game, and everybody's going to be mad that I'm not giving it a 10 out of 10. I think this game has some problems. It does have a new, larger game window. That's nice. I like the new window. I mean, I like how the game is larger, but I don't like the new interface. I preferred the previous interface, which was in the previous 9 games. This interface is kind of clunky because you have to constantly open up your inventory, pick an item, close your inventory, use the item, specifically also using the phone. Like with the vegetable puzzle, you need to open your phone, then you click on web, then you click on beans, then you click on like 3 buttons down before you actually get to the pictures that you need to solve the vegetables puzzle. The vegetable puzzle is terrible, and you have to do it 3 times, and everybody hates that puzzle. I don't know why it's in the game. There are so many chores in this game. Egg collecting is fine, but, you know, it always kind of bugs me that there's this evil chicken there, the chicken of doom, who kills Nancy. And, sorry, I'm getting way too mad. I accidentally knocked the game down. I'll try to be more quiet and calm. Okay, so, the chores are fine. I don't really like how every single day of the game, there are 3 days of this game, you have to do a different chore for all 3 of the people in the game. The horse feeding chore is not fun. That's terrible. You need more hints. The cake puzzle is fine, actually. So how much I like this game kind of depends on how much trouble I have with the chores. So, like, one time I played the game and I failed that cake making puzzle every single way you could fail it. That's just like 4 different ways. Oh my gosh, I was so mad at the game and hated it. Last time I played the game, the puzzles were pretty smooth, and I did a good job with the chores, and so I'm like, oh wow, this game isn't so bad if you don't fail everything. The characters themselves are interesting. I really like Tex. He's the gruff cowboy, and Shorty is a gossipy cook who's just funny, although I hate how he makes you do chores all the time. Dave's the handsome cowboy, and he's got a thing for Nancy. And Mary Yazzie, I feel like they could have done more with her. She seems too removed from everybody else because she's the only one who's not on the ranch. She does have a secret relationship with one of the cowboys, and I thought that was really cool. But I wanted to see more of Mary Yazzie, definitely. There's a bunch of interesting locations, like there's this really cool ghost town you get to explore, and then there's this area with all the petroglyphs, which is really kind of cool. And that puzzle's great too, because it's like there's a double puzzle with all the petroglyphs too, which you come back to at the end of the game. The premise is that Nancy's at the ranch, and Dirk Valentine left this huge scavenger hunt puzzle leading to gold for his true love, Francis Humber. And it was really dramatic when we got to read the diary of Francis's father. Just kind of a tragic love story. I really like that, and I really like going and solving all these puzzles. That was really good. There are 3 different days of the game, and there are like 4 characters: Bess, George, Uncle Ed, and Aunt Bet. They really should have been there, but I don't think the game had the budget to make another 4 characters and a horse, because there's a phantom horse. So all those people just aren't there. You can call them, but they aren't really there. The phantom horse is okay. It seems a bit like a weird distraction. Just in between just in between the days of the game. The phantom horse shows up and then something breaks. And is the house cursed? Well, no. Obviously somebody's using the horse as a distraction to try to like shut down the ranch so they can find Dirk Valentine's hidden treasure. And yeah, I just think it's cool. The lasso challenge is really cool. That's like the one chore I actually like. Tex makes you do a horse quiz, which is kind of a pain. I don't really like that. Turns out Dave is secretly looking for the treasure because his aunt is Francis's cousin, and he's got some letters from her. There are a couple of puzzles towards the end which I don't like. Like the magnet puzzle, not good. The bead sorting puzzle is an optional puzzle. I always skip it because it's kind of a terrible puzzle. The puzzle at Cappy's, where you have to like do the slot machine, if you don't save and reload on that puzzle, you're forced to do it over and over again, and that is a huge pain. One thing I like about this game, it's a little thing, but the differences between junior mode and senior mode are really well thought out in this game, and that's good. The final area of the game, you find Dirk Valentine's hidden treasure, which is like in these cliffside dwellings, and you have directions through the maze, but you don't follow the directions. You have to break the directions in order to find pieces of keys lost in this maze. I don't like that. I would not have done that. I would have put the keys along the directions. This is really cool at the end of the game when Nancy finds the keys and she finds the treasure, and it's really cool. And I'm time. Sorry. The culprit capture is good, though. That's what I was going to say next. The music in this game is also good. It's a good game, but those chores are just, especially those vegetable picking chores. So, 8 out of 10 for me. That's what I'd rank this game. Sorry to all the cowboy fans. I know I'm going to get angry comments on this because so many people think this game is a perfect 10 out of 10. Hi everybody, I'm Michael. This is a 5-minute review for Nancy Drew number 11, Curse of Blackmore Manor, which is a great game. I give this game like a 10 out of 10. It's definitely one of my favorites. It's just got so many puzzles, and you can do the puzzles in pretty much any order you want, which I think is great. I love how just all these puzzles are open to you at the end of the game. Compared to other games in the Nancy Drew series where like half of the area is locked off or such, and that is kind of the case with this, but I like how different areas open up as the game goes on. So, I mean, compared to like Tomb of the Lost Queen, this, which also has like these hidden passageways which you find as the game goes on, this is just done so much better with the hidden passageways and the puzzles and stuff. Sorry, fans of Tomb of the Lost Queen. I'll just hold the game case because it seems to be falling off. So the characters are really good too. I mean, all sorts of puzzles located throughout this game. It's great. It's also really creepy. I like the atmosphere, even though Nancy's just inside this giant manor the whole time. It really feels like we've got a bunch of different locations. It's got really consistently creepy, dark atmosphere, and especially Ethel. She is frightening. Oh my gosh, isn't she? Isn't she the scariest character who just pops up out of nowhere? Whew, man. Yeah, Lulu the parrot is funny. I like Lulu the parrot. Jane is like the perfect mix between like friendly and also creepy weird at the same time. Jane basically exists to make Nancy do chores, but there's also this scene like halfway through the game where you see Jane and Ethel do this creepy ritual in the middle of the night, and it is so creepy. Oh my gosh. And there's a lot of like additional scenes of creepiness. So like you can find a wolf fang, or you can find scratches by Nancy's door. Those things both appear on Nancy's door. You can see like the woman in black who's allegedly like the ghost of the witch who lived here, wandering down the hallways. That's really cool. You can see Mrs. Drake put something above Linda's door. So Linda Penvelin just moved to Blackmore Manor, and she's sort of becoming a werewolf. Another optional scene, you can see her werewolf hand, which is creepy. And I wish Linda had been different, though. That's one thing I would change. This Linda's just too mean and standoffish, and she never talks to you in like the second half of the game. That's not so good. I did like Mrs. Drake. She's an interesting character. And Nigel, he is so boring, that character. I mean, he's boring on purpose. He's like a history nerd. But still, I'm not a big fan of Nigel. And it's really funny, like halfway through the game, or towards the end of the game, where you move the statue inside his room, and that just scares him. So the story is Nancy finds like these hidden passageways, and she eventually finds like this curse. Whoa! The curse. Nancy actually solves the puzzle. It's basically a runes puzzle. You need to spell out the name of Eleanor, the witch, and that opens another area in the secret tunnels, which finally leads to a secret room where we've got this old forge, just a bunch of puzzles. And it turns out that the Penvelins have been setting up puzzles in their manor for years, protecting their famous, fabulous treasure. Nancy just has to solve all the various puzzles. People do not like that puzzle with the spinning rooms. That is kind of a pain. It's so easy to get lost. I'm actually not a fan of the puzzle right before that, which is the alchemy puzzle. So you go through the spinning rooms, you see the door is locked, and then you have to go back through the spinning rooms again to ask Nigel what the Ouroboros symbol is. And I'm like, I don't like that. I wish we could just look that up on Nancy's phone right away. Definitely a large variety of puzzles. I can't keep saying nice things. It's definitely a very puzzle-heavy game, but it's also got a lot going on with the different characters, and I think that's good. The music is good. I like the Bridget's song, Bridget with her eyes so bright, which is a puzzle that's cool. I like the 10 Ghosts puzzle as well, and the Singing Stairs. That's a good puzzle. I don't like the puzzle with the frog jumping across the pond, because that's just a random puzzle, and I don't like that very much. The puzzle with moving triangles, so you can get to the frog puzzle, fine. The puzzle of moving the various things above the doorway in Jane's room, that's kind of a pain. It's kind of a tough puzzle. Like, you know what the solution is, but it's still hard to get that solution actually done. Tommy, you can call him throughout this game, and he's pretty hilarious with his food orders. I also like the puzzle of the cricket ball. Lighting the dragons, that's a fine puzzle. That puzzle at the end, figuring out the key, is really long and complicated. I always just look up the solution. Calling Hugh Pinvillin is not so good. I don't think he's that great of a character. And I think that's everything I have to say about this game. Fantastic, 10 out of 10. Love pretty much everything, especially the puzzles and the environment. I wish Nancy could go back to Blackmore Manor in a future game. Hello everybody, I'm Michael. This is a 5-minute review for Nancy Drew number 12, The Secret of the Old Clock. I used to think this was one of my favorite games. I really like the setting of this game. The premise is that the game takes place in the year 1930. I think the game does a good job with this premise, makes a good use of it. So there's a lot of old-timey music and old-timey slang, especially with the character named Jane. She basically is the master at being in the year 1930. She's always making these references and using old-timey words, and she's a lot of fun. I like that. There's also a lot of puzzles based on the year 1930s. So, like, that was the Great Depression, and so money's kind of a big deal. Nancy having to save money and not waste her money. There's a coin-operated phone on the porch. Other things. There's like a ham radio challenge. There's hobo sign language. Ham radios exist today, but they're totally different today. They're on the computer. They're not like actual radios. So I think the game does a good job with the 1930s setting. It makes me wish there was another Nancy Drew game along those lines. Say a game that takes place in the year 1960, something like that. I thought that would be cool. Now, the downside is that it's kind of a gimmick. If you don't like the 1930s stuff, you're probably not going to like the game, because that seems to be the main selling point, honestly. The other major selling point is like, oh my, this is a game. It's based off the first Nancy Drew book ever. So that would be this book, and it was written in 1930, hence the 1930 setting. The problem is the game has nothing to do with this book. If you're actually a book fan, don't be playing this game. It has nothing to do with the book. It's actually like these 4 books. The first 4 books, just sort of thrown together haphazardly, and that doesn't make for a good story, because we've got random elements from unrelated books put together. They don't combine well, and so what we get is a bunch of characters that don't interact with each other. That's the main problem. That's the main problem with the story. The characters are just too separated from each other. Jim Archer in town, he basically has nothing to do with anyone. Jane basically has nothing to do with Richard Topham, who lives next door, who has basically nothing to do with Emily. It's not like he ever goes and talks to her, or goes and talks to Jane. He's just kind of a jerk and nobody likes him. Richard Topham's the character who lives next door, as I said. I kind of like him. I think he's the most interesting or memorable character in the game. He is a huge jerk and very self-centered. He's supposed to be, and it is kind of funny in a sense, but oh man, he's mean. Emily is our victim, and I think she doesn't quite work because she's too much of a victim, if that makes sense. She's got nothing going on besides her just going, Nancy, I need you to help me. I don't know what's going on with the Lilac Inn. So the culprit's trying to force her into selling the inn through a mixture of sabotage and through a mixture of trying to make her think that she's crazy. And that's okay, but, Emily doesn't really do anything. She just hides on her bed all day long, and I guess she's friendly and helps a little bit, but not really. And yeah, and like I said, there's a banker. He's got a security vault, so he opens up 2 security vaults, and that's basically all he does in the game. Oh, and he gives you the sewing puzzle. That's another big problem with this game, is the puzzles. Last time I played through, those puzzles were terrible. Way too many puzzles, which are bad. The sewing puzzle is not a fun puzzle because Nancy screams at you the whole time. Mini golf is a puzzle, which is really, really difficult, and it's just no fun. I don't like it at all. It's so terrible. You can never get the points right. It's just, yeah, it's just a really long, frustrating puzzle. Another long, frustrating puzzle is figuring out the psychic cards for Richard Topham. That's a terrible puzzle because it's guessing. It's guessing. Unlike mini golf, you can kind of get good at mini golf, but with the card puzzle, no, you can't kind of get good. You just have to get lucky when you're doing the random guessing to make the combinations right. And there's just like too many to guess from. It's a terrible, terrible puzzle. The pie sorting puzzle I think is fine, but some people really hate it. I thought the ham radio puzzle is fine, but it's kind of long. Also, the same with that, like, listening to the record puzzle. Really long puzzle to listen to, huh? Also, the driving around town challenge. I like delivering telegrams, but there's a trading sequence in the town which is really long and I don't like it. You have to catch a fish for this guy. That way he'll give you the cards for the orphanage charity ball. The orphanage needs 5 toys or 4 toys, I forget how many. And then the lady who runs the phones needs the cards or something, and then the cards are given to Miss Sheldon at Twin Elms. It's like you make a trade to make a trade to make a trade. It's like doing a chore for a chore, like 4 chores in a row. It's just not fun, which is sad because driving around town was actually kind of fun when you're delivering telegrams, but when it's just a stack of chores, it's not fun at all. Also, the endgame challenge where you have to chase after the culprit in a car. I thought that was fine, but the first time you play it, get ready for a lot of game overs. It's tough. Yeah. The culprit, I didn't even mention Josiah Crowley. So he's the old guy who used to live next door. He left a bunch of money to pretty much everyone. Nancy needs to solve a series of puzzles to find his will. That's the main premise of the story. And then, oh, I'm past my 5-minute time limit. Oh, okay. This is a 6-minute review for Nancy Drew's Secret of the Old Clock. I give this game like a 7 out of 10. I like the setting, but last time I played through, wow, the puzzles were bad, and just the disjointed, disconnected story didn't work for me either. So, 7 out of 10 for Secret of the Old Clock. Hi everybody, I'm Michael. This is a 5-minute review for Nancy Drew number 13, Last Train to Blue Moon Canyon, which is another excellent game in the Nancy Drew series. It is a 10 out of 10 from me. I think it's fantastic. Definitely one of the great games in the series. Part of what makes it so great is it has a bunch of different characters and they're all pretty interesting. Like the Hardy Boys are in this game. We get to see them and interact with them, which is really cool. And there's Charlena Purcell, who was in Secret of Shadow Ranch. She was only a phone contact in that game, but she's cool in this game. And Fatima is hilarious. She's a fantastic character. Pretty much every line she says has me in stitches. It's a really funny game. There's also Tino Balducci, who's this really terrible police officer, but he's so full of himself. It's funny. John Gray is probably the weakest of the characters because he's this ghost hunter and he really believes in ghost stuff, and his show just got canceled, so he has motive to do something crazy. But that's about it. They should have done something with him. I feel like we should have had more story with him. That would have made him a more interesting character. Because the other characters have storylines like, okay, well, Laurie has a big fight with Charlena about her romance novel. Laurie Gerard is this really rich character who is kidnapped at the start of the game, and like the first third of the game is going through this train. It's a train. Nancy goes through the train. She solves a bunch of puzzles, and she finds Laurie, and she basically gets this really long letter with a long set of puzzles. She needs to solve all of the puzzles in order to find the location of Jake Hurley's lost mine. And it's in Blue Moon Canyon. The title of the game kind of gives it away, but it's really well done. I like the setup of the train and the various puzzles. I feel like, if I could improve it, I would change where the sleeper car is. Yeah, because you have to go, that's like the second car, and there's like 2 puzzles in there, and you have to go back and forth between that all the time, and that's kind of a pain. There's also an optional storyline where somebody pulls the brake. That's an interesting one, solving that mini mystery. Nancy needs to find like these slugs on the ground, and she's got like this letter puzzle, not this letter, color puzzle, which works really well. Yeah, overall, I like the puzzles. You need to find these creepy dolls, and you really need to like take notes to get these creepy dolls figured out. I don't like that. Nancy needs to get these pipes figured out in every single train car, which I thought was a nice touch. Like every train car has its own little pipes puzzle. And yeah, like halfway through the game, we land in town where we have the crypt of Jake Hurley's wife with this really creepy crypt person. And there's Fatima, who, as I mentioned, is a fantastic, hilarious character who wants you to get Charlena Purcell's autograph. And Nancy has to do a puzzle for Tino. And Yeah, I think all the characters kind of make you do puzzles, except Charlena. Charlena's just there to work, really, and write her story, so she's not as involved in the mystery as the other characters are, which is fine. And I mentioned the Hardy Boys are in this game. They're hilarious. The best part of the game is Joe Hardy being obsessed with cheeseburgers. I thought that was great, and that's actually in some of the Hardy Boys books, is him being obsessed with cheeseburgers. So it's not something they made up for the game. I always find it funny when it gets referenced in other places. It's just so cool to see the Hardy Boys and interact with them and work with them, and they help you actually solve the mystery, which is really cool. And you get to explore the train when nobody else is there, so that's also a fun thing too. Like, you have to go through the train multiple times, and it's interesting because the train location, it feels like it would be small and confining, but it actually ends up being pretty expansive. Every single car feels like its own different situation, and it works really well. It's just, I love the setting. The end of the game is okay, where Nancy finally solves all the puzzles and puts them together. Frank does cheeseburger making and gets this really, really long clue for like one of the final puzzles of putting things together. You also have to find gems, put them in the correct spots, and that was kind of a stretch, kind of a weird puzzle. But oh man, I'm running out of time. Anyway, Nancy finds this lost cave, and it turns out that Jake Hurley had a letter from Abraham Lincoln, and that was the real treasure all along, his knack for making friends. And the culprit tries to kill Nancy, so the culprit can become famous for finding the letter all by themselves. Nancy has to escape from the mines, and then basically shoves the culprit in the mud. It's a funny ending. Luckily, the Hardy Boys are there too to help her out. I do like the ending of the game. I think it's fun and very dramatic and exciting going on the minecart thing. So overall, really good game, fantastic. One of those games that I just would love to play over and over and over again. It's great. Hi everybody, I'm Arglethump. This is a 5-minute review for Nancy Drew number 14, Danger by Design, which is the one where Nancy goes to Paris, France. And I think it's an okay game. I don't like it all that much. I think the two halves of the game don't fit at all. And you can really see this at the end of the game, where the ending comes out of nowhere because none of the characters are really involved with the storyline of finding lost art. I was actually talking about this game with one of my mom friends, and it's a game she never finished. She got to the halfway point and just sort of stopped. And I'm like, good for you. That's fine. The first half of the game is fine. So the first half of the game, Nancy is working as an internship in Paris. She's working for this really crazy fashion designer named Manette, who's really crazy and weird. She throws things and screams a lot, and she gives you weird jobs like, hey, I want a parrot. Get me a parrot. And she forces you to buy a bunch of stuff for her, which is a puzzle trying to figure out what exactly she wants. And this game has a lot of references to Secret of the Scarlet Hand. We have Prudence Rutherford in this game, and Sonny June's in this game too. I kind of like seeing stuff from them again. That was cool. And the culprit is basically threatening Manette, so they give her a threatening phone call, they send threatening messages, they dump a bunch of cockroaches inside her studio, and you have a puzzle to get rid of all the cockroaches. There's actually a paint bomb that they put inside her studio, which Nancy has to disarm. And then the second half of the game, we are finding lost treasure. Stained glass artwork, which the former owner of the Manette studio, it's a windmill. So she found a bunch of, she hit a bunch of lost, she stole a bunch of artwork, stained glass windows and things during World War II, and she hid it under a complex series of puzzles. And the second half of the game is Nancy just going through Paris and solving all sorts of puzzles in order to find this lost artwork. And does that connect to the characters? No. Nobody knows about this treasure. Nobody cares about this treasure. And once Nancy finds it, she turns around and goes back and sees who the culprit is. Does the culprit know anything about the treasure? No, the culprit ends up being these two German spies who are working with one of the characters to spy on the First Lady in this upcoming international exhibit, which has never been mentioned before ever. Like, we haven't heard about these guys, these culprits before, or about this exhibit. It just comes out of nowhere. And then Nancy admittedly has a cool fight with the culprit where they do like this weird karate thing. Nancy has to defend herself. That's actually kind of a cool puzzle, but it's still weird and comes out of nowhere. And it really, just the second half of the game just feels so disconnected. And from the first half, and it feels like it's not fair to some of the characters too. So a lot of the characters don't get mentioned in the ending. So JJ Ling, she is a model who Nancy lives with, and she forces Nancy to do this cookie making challenge, which is just really mean and selfish with this cookie making challenge. It's an okay puzzle, but I wish there had been a different justification for it, rather than JJ's like, you know what, I'm gonna get you fired because I don't care. What a jerk. And similarly, like, we're forced to do this really terrible, like, picture puzzle in Dieter's studio. And that, I don't think Dieter's mentioned at the end of the game either. Yeah, and that was kind of a terrible puzzle. And then he has the puzzle where he makes you take a bunch of pictures, but the list is in French and he can't bother translating it for you. Something that's inconsistent is how well Nancy can do French, because she doesn't know this list of basic French words, but at the end of the game, there's a letter which is completely in French, and she's totally fluent and can speak perfect French. But and she also gets into a fight with Jean-Michel Treclinar about how to pronounce French words, and that's just, it's kind of funny, but also kind of awkward too. And Jean-Mi is kind of an interesting character. He just sits at a cafe all day. At one point, he forces you to make parfaits, which is actually kind of fun. I did like the parfait challenge. But yeah, really, it's like Ghost Dogs and Moon Lake, where I feel like the two halves of the game just don't mesh together well. Yeah, but I mean, it's an okay game overall, but I mean, the setting's fine. It's I don't know how to explain it. I just don't like the second half of the game is where the game just kind of completely falls apart. It is kind of cool how there's an optional ending where you can get Heather, the assistant, in trouble. She's an okay character. She's also kind of bossy too. And I do like how there are multiple endings, but like I said, both endings ignore over half the cast, because half the cast is basically irrelevant to the second half of the game. And yeah, I think that's it. 6 or a 7 out of 10, I think I'd give this game. I think it's on the lower end for me. I think if the first half of the game, second half had been like the first half, then I would have had no problem with that. But as it is, just we take a right-hand turn and ignore basically the first half and the fashion stories. And then we only come back to it for a really terrible tacked-on ending with these culprits that we've never heard of before. Don't like it. So thumbs down there. So yeah, 6 or 7 out of 10. It's weird to say that. It's like, oh, it's a game I don't like, and I'm still giving it a score, which is pretty good. Like, that's 3 stars out of 5. 3.5 stars. It's not the worst score ever, but still, it's not a game I like. Hi everybody, I'm Michael. This is a 5-minute review for Nancy Drew, number 15, Creature of Kapu Cave. And oh my gosh, this game has so many problems. So many problems. This is, I mean, when it came out, it was the worst game in the Nancy Drew series, and pretty much everybody agreed upon it. I think it could have been improved if they had like another 5-6 months to work on this game. The ending makes no sense. The ending just has to jam-pack a bunch of exposition to actually explain the story, and it relies on a bunch of story elements, which, hey, guess what? Weren't actually in the actual game. It would have been good to know that information in the game. Like, one of the characters has an aunt who owns the property belonging to the Healy Research Center. Information we would have known. One of the characters is badly in debt. To who? Why? Who knows? And it's... The culprit's plan is that they're stealing bug pheromones so they can spray it inside the ocean, and that way the fritillated flag beetle or something, that population explodes. So there's a lot more Norsa beta odorata, which are moths, and they eat all the pineapples. And that's it. The idea is that people will shut down the Healy because there are no more pineapples. It's just, even just saying that out loud just sounds weird and terrible. Because Nancy's working with an entomologist named Quigley Kim, and that's why it's important. That's why we get the bug angle, and it's just I don't think it works. I'm sorry. We've also got the Hardy Boys in this game, so you can switch back and forth between Nancy Drew and the Hardy Boys, and I think that's pretty cool. But it doesn't really work that well because Nancy and the Hardys are too separated from each other. Like they literally can't visit each other or see each other. It feels like it's like I said with the previous game. We've got two totally separate games which kind of tie together but kind of don't, and it doesn't work. And Nancy Drew with Quigley Kim, she does a lot of wandering around. It takes a long time before you actually meet Quigley, and there's a lot of going back and forth between Quigley and the base camp. And Quigley just throws a bunch of orders at you and doesn't really listen to you. She's like not a good boss. I did like Dr. Craven, who's kind of this funny, angry guy. I do like the puzzles in this place are okay. I like the puzzle of breaking into his research facility and finding stuff, but I don't like how Nancy does it for basically no reason. Basically, Quigley's like, well, we could test the samples, or you could break into this place. And then we're still forced to do the samples anyway. It's like, why not do the samples first? Because guess what? The samples were the answer we were looking for. Nancy does this giant frass puzzle. It's a really long, complicated puzzle. No fun whatsoever. Everybody just looks up the solution on the internet because it's a terrible, terrible puzzle. And that's most of the game. Nancy wandering around finding frass stuff. And, bad, bad. The Hardy Boys, meanwhile, they're sort of investigating the Mapus, and the Mapus, we've got Big Island Mike, who forces you to do basically puzzles for Big Island bucks, and that's not fun either. It's mostly fishing, which takes forever. It's just torturously slow, and you have to do it over and over and over again. Okay, well, really like twice, but it's still like 20 minutes of just fishing so you can go scuba diving. Yeah, and the Hardy Boys have to go scuba diving at the end of the game. One of the Hardy Boys is knocked unconscious, which is kind of an interesting storyline, yeah, but you can miss that. It happened to me several times where you try to call the culprit and say, hey, culprit, call me back, I want to talk to you, and then the culprit just doesn't call you back. The end. Okay, fine. What a jerk. And then we have Nancy, Pua, who's the surfer girl who helps out the Hardy Boys, and she's okay. The graphics look a little weird. The scenery looks fine, but the character models look a little off, especially when you view them from a distance. They look kind of crazy. The end of the game, we go through the secret volcano. I really like the Kapu Cave, where Nancy solves a bunch of puzzles. It feels like an Indiana Jones challenge, which is really cool. It's complete with a giant rolling stone ball. And the Hardy Boys show up there, and there's a really bad puzzle where Nancy has to jump around. Frank has to jump from place to place. The Hardy Boys look hideous in this game. Did I mention that? They are hideous looking. Those are those terrible character models. Oh my gosh. And that final jumping puzzle is not good. Like I said, they had to dump a bunch of exposition there at the end of the game just to try to make the ending make sense, and it doesn't really make sense. So I feel like the story needs to be fixed. You need to get rid of all the time-wasting stuff, because it feels like, especially with Quigley and the Frass puzzle, that's just there to waste time and make the game longer. Same with the fishing. So like the game needs to be faster plotted. It actually needs to have more. I think if they'd played up the angle with the creature of Kapu Cave, like this monster who's attacking, I feel like that could have been an interesting angle to take the story in. But as it is, it's sort of like an afterthought. So just like, it could have been a good game, but it needs like a rewrite. The scenery is good, but oh man, just a rewrite to make it more fast-paced and have it make sense and all those things. Final score, like I said, worst game of the series so far. 5 or a 6 out of 10, really? It's still fun, you know, to be honest. My daughter loves this game. I'm like, how could you love this game? It's so bad. But out of like the 3 or 4 Nancy Drew games she's played, she likes it the most. So the game does, in fact, have its fans. I can't believe she likes this more than The Captive Curse, more than Curse of Blackmore Manor. I don't know. Wow. Anyway, what can I say? 5 or a 6 out of 10 for Creature of Kapu Cave. Definitely not one of my favorites. Hi everybody, I'm Michael. This is a 5-minute review for Nancy Drew game number 16, White Wolf of Icicle Creek. And it's an interesting game. I don't really like this game though. I feel like it's really torturous, especially at the end. It's another one of those games where it's like the final third of the game is just, you're basically given this giant set of puzzles to solve, and you don't interact with any of the characters. It's just Nancy wandering around by herself solving puzzles. One of the puzzles is Fox and Geese, which is a really terrible puzzle, and nobody likes it except for a few people on the internet. Hi, few people. Hope you enjoy this video. Please like and subscribe. But other than that, yeah, really a terrible puzzle. The other puzzles that you have to solve are okay, but I mean, at this point, I just followed the notes that I wrote when I originally played the game. It's just not fun. I'm sorry to bash on the final third of the game. The first part of the game is interesting, though. I keep knocking this thing down. I'm sorry. I need to just sit in my chair and not go back and forth. Nancy's at Icicle Creek Lodge, where she has to investigate a series of mysterious accidents. Somebody just keeps sabotaging this place. And that's really cool, and you can call all these people. That's cool, fine. Lots of phone calls, though. I don't like that too much. But you could skip most of them. The characters are... I don't like how Nancy volunteers to be the maid and do a bunch of chores, and so that's sort of what the first half of the game is. And the cooking challenges, which are okay, but they just take forever. I wish it had been Nancy needs to make 3 meals instead of 6 meals every single day, and she has to do it 3 times a day. So I don't know how much time it is, but it feels like it's every 15 minutes Nancy's forced to just stop whatever she's doing and do cooking for 15 minutes, because it's not a short challenge. I don't really like the cooking stuff. The rest of it's fine. The characters are fine. Lou is funny. So is Bill. I like the back and forth between Lou and Bill Kessler. That's funny. Ollie's okay. He's basically Tex, a grumpy cowboy. Johnny Volkstein is this extremely intense guy. And I don't want to be mean, but... what's her name? Guadalupe. She's probably the worst character. Really bland, and it's very easy to miss her because she's barely there. She's not there for most of the game. Sometimes she stands by the window, but most of the time she doesn't. And there's definitely people who have beaten this game without talking to her once. They didn't even know she was a character. Nancy does a chore run at the front. Bill forces her to clean off the ice and then do ice fishing, at which point the culprit tries to kill her. And fishing was kind of a huge hassle the last time I played this game. Gosh, got super stuck on that puzzle. Yeah. And then there's the jumping across the icebergs puzzle, which is fine. Nancy has to do the avalanche stuff. I did get stuck in a lot of places last time I played this game. Maybe that's why I don't have happy memories of this game. I do like playing the snowball fight game with Freddy. That's fun. What Nancy does is she has to basically explore the area. She finds an old hut where this man trained this white wolf. There's a wolf that's been wandering around, and everybody thinks it's evil and stuff like that. But it turns out it's actually a trained wolf, and Nancy uses the wolf to get inside Trapper Dan's needle, which the culprit... She discovers very early on, hey, the culprit's operating out of here, because the culprit just left fabric inside the needle. Very obviously, there's a hidden door there. But Nancy has to solve this really complex series of puzzles set up as an emergency backup to open up the door. Guadalupe gets kicked about halfway through the game. Lou Talbot leaves pretty soon after her, which is fine. You know, I'm glad they're gone, because when they're gone, you don't have to do the cooking challenges anymore, and I hated the cooking challenges. At the same time, it's like, oh boy, 2 of the characters just left the game. Okay, who's the culprit now? And let's see, Nancy gets trapped in a sauna because she finds a letter there, which is interesting. Oh, Nancy has to deal with Tino Balducci, who makes her do the dumbest puzzle. It's dumb on purpose, which is funny, but still, it's just so dumb. I can't believe Tino's in this game. And he's getting paid. Nancy's not getting paid. Nancy's boss is kind of terrible, too. Ugh, not a fan of her, Chantal. So, I don't know what I'd give this game. Maybe it's because I just don't like the cold and the snow, and this game has a lot of cold and snow, and so I don't like the environment. The puzzle at the very end of the game, where you have to do a snowmobiling puzzle, way too long, too difficult. Don't like that either. So I think I give this game like a 6 or a 7 out of 10 because it's, this is one of my games I don't really like it. I played it once and that's enough for me. I have no desire to ever replay it. Hi everybody, I'm Michael. This is a 5-minute review for Nancy Drew Legend of the Crystal Skull. So this is the first Nancy Drew game that I did a video walkthrough for on the internet. So this is what got me to be the Nancy Drew dude who plays the games online all the time. And, as a result, it is one of the games that holds a special place in my heart. It is a very good game. I do like the creepy, dark environment. This is just a creepy, strange, weird game. The sort of meta puzzle is finding 26 eyeballs, and yeah, sort of like the previous game, you find this old diary which lists all these various puzzles. It just Nancy has to solve puzzle after puzzle after puzzle to find all of these glass eyeballs, and you need to put them in a specific order that lets you open up a tomb which has the crystal skull inside. So storyline is that Bruno Bolet had a crystal skull, but he died, and the crystal skull was supposed to let him live forever. Nancy kind of investigates here. It's kind of like he was murdered. The culprit sent a letter, a fake letter, to Bruno saying, "Oh, the crystal skull is a fake," and that sort of traumatized him so much, surprised him so much, he had a heart attack and died right on the spot. And he did set up that long, complicated series of puzzles. That way, oh man, how is Henry related to him? His great nephew Henry Bolet would be able to solve the series of puzzles and find the crystal skull. Henry Bolet is an interesting character. Everybody loves him. I love his sarcastic attitude. A lot of people think he's gorgeous and good looking. I don't know about that. But I do like the drama with him. He's got a terrible girlfriend, and I feel so bad for him when he has this big fight with his girlfriend. Nancy kind of takes advantage of that and blackmails him so she can get one of those glass eyeballs, which is not so good of Nancy. It's kind of mean of her. Nancy finds hidden rooms and hidden passageways inside the manor. Of course she does. And there's a creepy graveyard in the backyard. You have multiple puzzles where you have to go throughout the entire graveyard. One is finding a bunch of tombs, and other is finding a bunch of mushrooms. I don't like the puzzle where you have to find the wasps and you have to fight them for it's not a guava, a loquate, and then you have to go up to the attic and use the loquate, and then back down, and you need 3 loquates. Well, technically you only need 2 in order to beat the game, but, 3 of them to, fully experience the game, because you use the loquates to dress up in a goanna, and a pirate costume, and in a mailman costume, and what's the other, a clown costume? No, and an eye doctor costume. Yeah, so there's... It's weird, yeah, but this game does make use of the animals, because we have Iggy the iguana, and we also have an alligator, and we also have a spider, 2 puzzles with the spider. And let's see, the puzzles are mostly solid. The time will tell puzzle is fine. Some of the puzzles, it's just too much of a pain to go back and forth between the book and the actual puzzle itself, so make notes, take down notes to get through them. The tooth puzzle, and then there's the bird puzzle where you push down the bird heads, and then a really long puzzle where you have to dig with a shovel. Other characters in this game, Renee Amond, who is the really creepy lady who takes care of the plants, and you have to go into her room to get a bunch of chocolate. That's great, I like getting the chocolate, but oh man, her room is so creepy, and it looks like there's blood on the walls, because and that relates to a creepy dummy which is inside the hidden attic. And Bess is in this game. Nancy's friend Bess is in this game. You switch back and forth between Bess and Nancy a lot in this game. You have to do 3 or 4 different scenes with Bess, and they're all fantastic. I really like Bess. It really lends something different to this game to be playing as a different character who's not as invested in solving mysteries, who's actually kind of scared about snooping. And she has a different personality, and if you read the notes in her notebook, those are funny. She deals with 2 characters. So Bruno Bolet's best friend, who's a doctor, and he's part of this weird, creepy skeleton man group. And once Nancy shows up at the very start of the game, she gets knocked out by Skeleton Man. And Bess has to, steal the Skeleton Man costume and infiltrate their meeting, which is cool. Let's see. Bess has to deal with Lamont. I feel really bad for Lamont. He sort of runs this knick-knack store, and Bess has to solve a puzzle to disable him because he's got a box of Bruno Belay stuff. So Bess has to, at one time, she feeds him bad gumbo to get him out of the way, and another time she has to solve this really cool puzzle in order to make him sneeze. And then he's like sneezing for 5 minutes. Wow. And this game also has an appearance by Professor Hotchkiss, which is cool, and I'm already on my 5-minute timing. So really great game, fantastic. Really creepy atmosphere. Wish that the graveyard puzzle had been less, but there's so much liked about this game. Either a 9 or a 10 out of 10, maybe a 9.5 out of 10. It's really up there, one of the best Nancy Drew games. It's definitely good. I can see why people love it so much. Hi everybody, I'm Michael. This is a 5-minute review for Nancy Drew number 18, The Phantom of Venice. And this is a really good game. It's one of my favorites, actually. I love this game. It's so bright and colorful, and I just love the setup that Nancy's a spy who's working for the Italian FBI, so the GDIF, and she has like a police contact who's giving her secret missions where she spies on this one guy who's a suspected criminal, and she has to infiltrate the criminal ring by pretending to be a professional thief named Samantha Quick. That's really cool. I wish that The Silent Spy had been like this. The Silent Spy, where Nancy's also sort of a spy, like, not as good as this game. It's just a lot more fun, and it feels like a lot more structured, where Nancy has to figure out what's going on with the culprits, and she has to, like, secretly put a bug on every single person in the car where she's living, and halfway through the game, the Phantom of Venice shows up and steals the necklace, the locket that she's wearing, which is super intense. The Phantom is just running around Venice and stealing things, and Nancy's just basically, investigating these people who are working with the Phantom. It's cool. She has to break into Fongo's office multiple times. Like I said, she has to get the material to like trick these people into thinking she's a master thief, and she actually does have to steal this sapphire in this series of puzzles, which is great. The robot puzzle, oh man, that's kind of long and drawn out. I don't like it so much. I really like the catsuit dancing puzzle. That's a fun one, although it's a little weird. You have to follow these pigeons throughout town. You feed a tracking device which explodes to a pigeon, which is so weird to say, but that's how it is. And there's a really long puzzle where you follow a series of notes on the fax machine. I thought that was a weird puzzle and didn't quite fit. I wouldn't have included that in the game, but Nancy needs it to find the safe house. So I feel like they could have done that some other way, like there was a note that says the safe house is XYZ. I feel like that would have been better. So yeah, this leads to the final puzzle of the game. Actually, a series of final puzzles. Capturing the Phantom, that's a fun puzzle, where all the directions are in Italian and you have to click and figure out where the Phantom is. That's cool. But the puzzle inside, where you turn the water levels on and off in the sewers, terrible puzzle. Nobody likes it. So easy to get lost. Even with the clues and the hints on junior mode, it's impossible and terrible. After that, you have a puzzle to set water levels, and then a puzzle to chase the culprit all over town. And those two puzzles are fine. Let's see. Let's talk about the characters, shall we? Got some great characters in this game. Samantha Quick is, she calls Nancy once, but it's a very memorable conversation. It's so creepy and nasty. Taza forces you to play, Scopa over and over and over again. Well, twice. It's fine. It's a fine puzzle, but that's basically what he does. I think he's okay. And Nico is interesting too. He is actually the Phantom. I really like how, like, Nico and Taza are not major characters. They don't play much of a role, but they still get, like, full characters that you get to meet and interact with. Well, you don't really interact with Nico, but that's fine. Fungos, we don't interact with. Let's talk about the characters you actually interact with. Okay, so Nancy's roommate, Helena, I think she's kind of boring. I mean, she's basically there to give exposition. I don't think she's that interesting of a character. Cullen is a memorable character. He has an open crush on Nancy, but he freaks out a lot. He gets really mad when he thinks she broke her broke his microscope, and then he forces you to watch this really super boring tesserae puzzle, and he forces you to do a really long, terrible tesserae puzzle, which I don't like at all. And he forces you to watch a tesserae slideshow, which goes on forever, and it's so boring. And then there's Margarita, who owns this place, and she's kind of terrible. She's just terrible and self-centered, just not a very nice person in general. And yeah, but other than that, those are the characters, right? Yeah, lots of characters. The ending to the game is fine. I feel like the ending scene did a little bit too much explaining of what the Phantom Crime Ring did. I would have preferred more about the various characters. It turns out Colin is actually operating under a secret identity because he used to be a criminal. That was kind of a cool plot twist. And yeah, just overall a very fun, colorful game. I like it. It does have problems, but I'd probably give it a 9 out of 10. Yeah, but there are some puzzles, which, like the Tesserae puzzle and the robot puzzle, and some people swear the Scopa puzzle is terrible and don't like it. And those are definitely things which bring the game down a little bit, but, yeah, the wells draining puzzle's terrible too. So maybe like an 8 or a 9 out of 10, because it's got like 3 or 4 puzzles which are like, this puzzle is terrible. But other than that, I really love the game. The setting, the setup, it's great. One of my favorites. Hello everybody, I'm Michael. This is a 5-minute review for Nancy Drew number 19, The Haunting of Castle Malloy, which is a really great game. I really like the game. It's the game that takes place in Ireland. That's right. That's why I really like the game. We have Donal, who's fantastic. He's just this angry Irish guy who stays at the pub all day long and forces Nancy to do his chores. He's just a great, fun character. And then he sleeps through like the end of the game, which is a great joke. The premise is that Nancy is here because she's the bridesmaid to Kyler Malloy. Apparently she used to live with the Drew family for like 6 months, even though she's never been mentioned before. But Nancy's her bridesmaid, and she's in Ireland, where they're getting married in this abandoned castle. It doesn't seem like a good place for a wedding. When Nancy arrives, a banshee shows up and destroys her car, and the groom is missing. He's been kidnapped. Oh no. So Nancy has to solve a bunch of puzzles, just trying to figure things out. So like Kyler forces her to do a bunch of bridesmaids chores, and she has to do a bunch of chores for Donal. There's a lot of exploring in this game, exploring the grounds, and that's not so good because it's very dark and it's not obvious where things are. I know a lot of people got stuck on like the sheep puzzle, just the puzzle of finding all 10 of the sheep, which is kind of a really tough puzzle. Yeah. Usually, I feel like this game is a bit too puzzle heavy, but all the puzzles are good and solid, so I'm not that upset about it. But I don't like the flower puzzle where you have to go through every single area of the game in hopes of finding these flowers, because some of them involve, these are locations that you only visit the one time. Yeah, this game has too many locations where it's like you just go there once and that's it. And so how are you supposed to know locations there and when you're supposed to go there? Yeah, that aside, the characters are interesting. I really like Kyler. She's great. She's fantastic. She has like a 12-digit phone number memorized. But replaying this game now that I'm older and you know, I've actually been married, I'm like, wow, she's kind of crazy and totally in denial. We also have Kit, who has a black eye. He's the groom's best friend. Love drama because he's still in love with Kyler. And yeah. We have the Banshee that shows up, just flying around partway through. That's really scary. Nancy has to find the Banshee's hut by solving a puzzle through the swamp bog, and that's an interesting puzzle too. It's a nice, interesting location. And there's a sheep doll there that needs stuffing, so that prompts like 2 puzzles with Nancy where she has to get the sheep taken care of for Donal. I like mixing drinks at the bar. That's a fun puzzle. Playing music at the bar, that's not as much fun. I do like those, the darts game, not so good at, but Difference Detective. These are two arcade games at the pub. Those are interesting too. I really like the phone calls because you can call Nancy's friends, Beth, George, and Ned, and they're all at this pool party together. I feel like that's a really good setup for those characters. Towards, like, the final third of the game is where the game just completely goes off the rails. And, Nancy's been finding all these clues all along. She finally puts, like, these printing press plates together because there's a printing machine. There's also sort of like a subplot with the best man, which I didn't think was that good. It kind of didn't go anywhere. We have one phone call with Alan Payne, and that's it. He's kind of ignored for the rest of the game. But Nancy puts clues together and finds a jetpack. Instructions for an actual jetpack, and she uses it to fly around, and that's how the Banshee's been flying around. The Banshee is just somebody who's been living in the bog for her entire life with a jetpack, and she's been flying around, and we have puzzles flying around with the jetpack. It's just so weird and out of nowhere. And then Nancy visits her hut, and she gets captured, and she has to build a rocket. And it's just like, what is going on with this final third of the game? The one bright point is we actually get to meet Matt, the kidnapped person. We get to have a nice long conversation with him. The rocket ship puzzle's it's kind of bad. It's like a 5-step puzzle, and one of them is the chemicals puzzle, and that is just terrible, and it just completely destroys my day. It's really hard to solve that puzzle without dying over and over again. It's just no fun. And no, Fiona actually didn't Fiona, she's the culprit. She's the one who kidnapped Matt. She actually kind of didn't do it on purpose. It's sort of an accident on her part. I felt like they were trying to do something different with the culprit who's not really a culprit, but it didn't really work. It leaves the game feeling kind of empty without a culprit confrontation. Instead, we have that terrible, terrible chemicals puzzle at the very end. And so I think it's a good, decent game. Dark, scary, great environment. Love all the Irish stuff. But the final third of the game, man, I cannot get behind that. So good game, which sort of goes off the rails at the end. A 6 or a 7 out of 10, because like I said, 2/3 of it's good. Like the final third, I wouldn't go with that. So if the game had like a traditional ending where one of the characters is like, haha, I'm the culprit. I tricked you into thinking there was a banshee there. I would have liked it a lot better, actually. That instead of the chemicals puzzle, yeah. I mean, you could have had like a similar ending where one of the characters throws Nancy into that hidden area and she still has to solve like the rocket puzzle. But still, I don't know. Anyway, thanks for watching my review. Bye! Hi everybody, I'm Michael. This is a 5-minute review for Nancy Drew number 20, Ransom of the Seven Ships, which is the worst game in the Nancy Drew series. People say it's either this one or the Shattered Medallion. Now, both of those games are so lacking in terms of characters and storyline that it really just comes down to the puzzles. That's what I thought about. And the puzzles in this game are just terrible. There's a lot of good puzzles, which I really enjoyed. I can handle games which are mostly puzzles, like Curse of Blackmore Manor. That's got a lot of puzzle solving, and that's fine. But this game has a lot of bad puzzles, ones that just make you want to throw your computer out the window. So let me just kind of go through the list of puzzles. The water puzzle to fix the golf cart, I think that's fine. A lot of people really don't like it. The digging around puzzle, that's kind of way too long. I feel like if it had been half as long, it would have been a lot better. The cryptogram puzzle is not so good because it's just a really long cryptogram puzzle. You have to do it 3 times. Then later on in the game, you get a second cryptogram puzzle, which you have to do 5 times, and it's not good. And I feel like they should have put in a line of dialogue where Nancy indicates you've got the puzzle correct, because I've definitely gotten stuck in the game not knowing if I'm done or not. So, other puzzles. The monkey puzzles are all terrible, and you have to do the monkey puzzles over and over and over again. The throwing things puzzle is really difficult. The puzzle in the middle, the monkey in the middle is just terrible because it's all random. So you can just get stuck doing that puzzle over and over and over again. There's nothing you can do. There's no strategy. It's just click the button and hope to get lucky. It's just not fun at all. And the colors puzzle is also a really bad one, too. So all those monkey puzzles are torturous, and you have to do 4 monkey puzzles, I believe. That's like the bare minimum. Yeah. So they're not good. Underwater Sudoku is also kind of just a huge hassle because you have this time limit, and it's not a good time limit. The time limit just goes too quickly. The swimming octopus puzzles, I feel like that's fine. Again, you're running under a time limit because Nancy can't be underwater forever, and that's just a pain. Last time I played the game, making the whatever you call it, the squares underwater for the octopus, that was just torturous and terrible for me. And the game kept resetting the puzzle over and over again, and it's hard to look at the notes. Yeah. And then there's the hourglass puzzle, which is terrible, and that is just terrible. And then there's the underwater swimming puzzle, which is not so good. Climbing up the mountain to find the bats should be fine, but it's really bad because the monkeys keep throwing stuff at you. When you're inside the cave, you've got the light bouncing puzzle, which is fine. They do that in a bunch of other Nancy Drew games. The jigsaw puzzle after that is not good, but I do like how it turns into a slider puzzle at the end. That's clever. The puzzle to find the Atosha, they're spinning the dates, that's fine. The puzzle immediately after that, where you have to change shapes around in order to form a picture of an owl, I believe, not good. It's not good. Navigation in this game is flat out terrible. So both going around the island as a boat, sailing, that's bad, and then going around the island on your car, it's just terrible. The navigation of driving was so much better in Secret of the Old Clock. Why didn't they just reuse that? My gosh. It's just so slow, and it takes forever to get anywhere, and it's not fun. And I've got to get to the... So, basically, the puzzles aren't so good, and that's basically all there is to support this game. The music's good, too. I like that. The characters and mystery aren't so good. So George is your character. George is useless and doesn't really do anything throughout the game. I'm sorry, this game did not handle George well. Cuckoo the Parrot is fun. I like Cuckoo the Parrot. And Bess, we only see a little bit of Bess, but she's fun. We get to see her at the end. Oh man, that key puzzle at the very end, also a really terrible puzzle. And the instructions are at the back of the book, so you have to keep flipping to the end of the book to get it to work. It's like, ugh. Astrolabe puzzle's too much of a hassle for me to solve. And then Johnny Roll is our only suspect, and he's the culprit. And people really hate that because it's obvious he's the culprit. He's the only suspect. And, gosh, it's racist, too, because Johnny Roll is somebody who's pretending to be Australian, who's pretending to be Jamaican, if you can wrap your head around that explanation. And the game has actually been discontinued due to those racist elements. It's like we've got somebody pretending to be an ethnicity that he is clearly not, and that's offensive. And personal review policy that I take 5 points off of a score if we've got bad sexist or racist elements. I had to implement that because I read too many 1940s mysteries, and that comes into play with this game, so I have to drop 5 points from the score, leaving this game as a 0 out of 10. I did want to talk about the culprit. I thought the culprit reveal was memorable, it's kind of cool, but there are mistakes, such as the fact that it's a returning culprit. It's a culprit from a previous game, and that was cool, but the culprit has a totally different voice. The culprit doesn't really look like they looked in the previous game, and the culprit doesn't have the same motivation as they did in the previous game. So in this game, the motivation is, I just want treasure, which doesn't really match with what the culprit's plan was in the previous game. I did like seeing the culprit come back, though. That was cool. And that's it. Thank you very much for watching my 5-minute review of Nancy Drew, Ransom of the Seven Ships. Hi everybody, this is a 5-minute review for Nancy Drew Dossier, Lights, Camera, Curses, which is an okay game. I give it a 6 out of 10. I think it's fine, but a lot of Nancy Drew fans don't like it. It's supposed to be a casual adventure game, which is fine. I like casual adventure games. They were, and still are, quite popular. The problem is, I feel like this game totally failed when it came to reaching both of his audiences, because the fans of the normal Nancy Drew games looked at this one and said, it's weird, huh? It's got a lot of weird stuff that I don't like. And then that's exactly what fans of casual adventure games said, too. They're like, why are we doing bubble matching? What's going on here? So I feel like they should have done their research a bit more, checked out more casual adventure games, like the Lost Lands series, or the Immortal Love series, Living Legends, games like that. You can see my walkthroughs for those if you want to get a sense of what they're like. But They look more like Nancy Drew games, where they look like Nancy Drew games like 26 and onward, where we've got an inventory at the bottom of the screen and a hint button in the lower right. They look more like that. So I really wish this game had an inventory. That feels more natural and makes more sense to adventure gamers than the bubble matching challenge, which is what this game does. So, I mean, it makes sense. Like, I pick up the scissors from my inventory and I use them to cut the ribbon. That's an easy enough puzzle. In this game, it's more like, okay, I need to find the bubble for the ribbon, and then unselect it. Find the bubble for the scissors, then I select the scissor bubble and I use it on the ribbon bubble, and then that matches the two items together. That mixes them together, which means scissors, cut, ribbon. And it's just kind of overly complicated. It's not, I'm making it sound more confusing than it is with the bubble matching thing, but it's not intuitive, whereas having an inventory on screen is intuitive, and I feel like that would have made this game far more amenable to Nancy Drew fans and casual gamers. I feel like both those groups would have liked this game better if it had the typical casual game setup with an inventory and a hint button, and also a skip puzzle button. Yeah, that's something that's common in casual adventure games, not in any of the Nancy Drew games. So the bottom of the screen, just, I would completely revamp it too, because it's got like a really huge menu button, which is unnecessary. And then there's a describe your current task button, which is large as well, and that's unnecessary too. We've got some blank space. And then we've got the 5 action icons, which are not very useful. The one icon is look at things, and I feel like that's unnecessary. Again, would have done what they do in the Nancy Drew games or in other adventure games, where your cursor turns into a magnifying glass if you can look at something. That's a lot easier. The other icon is like a hand icon. That's the other useful one. You use it a lot. And it's just so generic. It's complete in action. That's basically what it does. It's so generic that you use it all the time. And so, yeah, those are basically the two action icons you use. Look at and just generic action. The other 3 are not so good as well. One is use batteries. There's a crow battery matching puzzle where you have to match crows in the dark. Terrible puzzle. All the time challenges in this game are not very good. There's also the audio decryption puzzle, which isn't so good. And I've just been spending like 4 minutes talking about the interface and how the game's set up. Let me talk a little bit more about that. I wish the game had free range Nancy, so you could go wherever you want, whereas the way the game's set up, it switches you between locations every 5 minutes or so. There are only like 6 locations in the game. It would have been cool if you could choose the order in which you visit those locations. That would have been fine. I'm actually fine with the short chapters. That's cool. But I wish it had been that you could move around and investigate the areas in whatever order you choose. That would have opened up the game a lot more. And yeah. Okay, so I'm almost at my 5-minute limit. I didn't talk about the characters or anything. I guess I'll save it for my review of the second Nancy Drew Dossier game. Try to fill in a little bit more of this. But overall, I give it like a 6 out of 10. It's a good attempt, but it's not that good of an attempt. I feel like it could have been a lot better. It should have been way more like a normal casual adventure game. I feel like then it would have been far more successful. Hi everybody, I'm Michael. This is a 5-minute review for Nancy Drew Dossier 2, Resorting to Danger. So I spent all of the review for the first Dossier game, I spent all of that talking about the interface and how the game's set up. So let me talk more about the other things. This game has a bright, colorful environment, which is great. I like that. I also like the characters in this game. The characters are better than in the first game. They're more lively, and we get a lot more animation with the characters, which is sort of a problem with the first game, is you rarely see animation with the characters. So there's a conversation challenge that happens quite often, and it starts with like a full screen animation of the characters, and then it just turns into picture frames, just smaller pictures of them occasionally moving. Well, this game has a lot more animation with the characters, although I still wish we had full screen animation for all the characters all the time. That would have been great. This game also improves that terrible action icon bar. I would have gotten rid of it and done an inventory. This one does it slightly different. It has like 6 or 7 different action icons at the bottom of the screen, and they change like every single chapter. So like, you know, if there's a chapter where you need to pull something open, like you pull open a drawer, we get a pull button right there at the bottom of the screen. That's cool. There is room for 2 inventory things at the bottom of the screen, which is nice. That's usually used for puzzles. So like you've got a piece of paper that you need to refer to multiple times, that usually gets thrown into your inventory. It's not actually used that much for inventory icon puzzles. I think this game has a lot more puzzles, like logic puzzles, where you have to, you know, follow the clues. Like in Nick's office, you need to find, you've got like 5 clues and you need to put these 5 tiles in the correct order according to the clues. That sort of logic puzzle. Or, I don't know, I feel like you'd have an inventory thing with all the Zodiac creatures on it, and it has a list of that, and you'd refer back to that when you're pressing all the Zodiac symbols in order. That's just a sort of puzzle which is interspersed throughout the game, which the previous game I feel is lacking. The previous game was mostly just matching puzzles. The way the Dossier games are set up, they have several, they both have like 5 or 6 mini game challenges, which you do over and over again. This one has like a number challenge, which is good. It has a bunch of different variations, which is clever and creative. But towards the end, it gets really tough. And I'd say like that's true of all of the puzzles in this game. Like the bomb puzzle, they have a lot of variations, or the facial puzzle. They're more varied than the previous game. The previous game, all the puzzles were basically sort of the same. It's just matching tiles, really. This one has a lot more variation with the minigame puzzles, but I feel like the minigame puzzles get a lot harder, especially in the final third of the game. There's also the spinning balls, colored balls, you want to make them match. That's a terrible puzzle and nobody likes it. Everybody who reviews the game complains about that puzzle. I'm complaining about it. The characters in this game are a lot more lively and a lot more memorable. It's really cool that you get to choose the culprit in this game. Halfway through the game, you get to pick the culprit, and whoever you pick ends up being the culprit at the end of the game. I think that's cool. I like it. It adds more replay value to the game. I said the setting was better than the first game. The first game was like this dark noir setting, which worked fine, but I prefer this setting. It's bright and colorful. Just the characters. Yeah, this one is a lot better than the first game, but it's also got some killer puzzles towards the end. Going through the maze at the end is just really bad. Just bad. That's terrible. And it's like a terrible 2-part puzzle. So you're going to spend 10 minutes wandering throughout the maze, solving Greek mythology puzzles, and there are no clues. It's not like you've got a book of Greek myths to tell you who Hipparchus is. I don't even know who that is off the top of my head, but you're supposed to memorize you're just supposed to have all these characters memorized. Okay, and that's like a 10-minute wandering around puzzle, followed by another puzzle, which is sort of the same thing. The idea is that you're solving riddles, but, you know, if you don't know who Hipparchus is, well, then how are you supposed to solve the riddle about what he's famous for? So I really feel like the game could have used a clue or clues about that. Mr. Mingles the dog is cute, and I'm coming up on my 5-minute limit, so I feel like this game was an improvement over the previous Dossier game. It did some things. Oh, did I say it added a hint button? Added a hint button. Yes, that was good. But there's still some problems with the Dossier series. I feel like a third game would have improved upon it. I think that would have been... I think like if you know, second game is so much better than the first game that, you know, if the third game had been equally better than the game that came before it, it would have been great. It would have been fantastic. Sadly, they did not make a third game, so the preview for the third game in the series at the end of this one always feels like a bit of a tease, because they never made the third game, and they probably never will. Still, I feel like it's better than the first game, so I give it 1 point more. Those are my thoughts on the two Nancy Drew Dossier games. Interesting side series. I still feel like if it had been done like more like casual adventure games from the very start, then I think it would have been a more popular series and would have continued beyond just 2 entries. Hi everybody, I'm Michael. This is a 5-minute review for Nancy Drew number 21, Warnings at Waverly Academy. And wow, this is such a good game, especially compared to the worst game in the series, which is the one that came right before it, Ransom of the Seven Ships. This game just has just a much better environment, much better characters. There are so many characters in this game. The previous game had one character and a parrot. This game has like 5 or 6 characters. It's so fantastic, and they're all pretty well developed and interesting, and I like how they play off of each other. And the story is that somebody is basically sabotaging people at this school. All the people are in the running for a valedictorian race, and they all basically force Nancy to do their chores, homework. In another game, it'd be chores, but in this game, they basically force Nancy to do their homework. I just love all the characters and the setup and the puzzles. The secondary storyline is Nancy needs to find this lost treasure, which is hidden inside inside Waverly Academy. So that's cool. You can do that at the same time of meeting all the characters and doing their homework challenges. Specifically, there's this girl named Rachel who needs your help, and I like Rachel, one of my favorite characters. But she's also a little psycho, as everybody says. Like, she keeps forgetting you, and it's weird. It does get explained. I don't want to go into spoilers, but Rachel's weird behavior gets explained, and it's so awesome. It makes no sense if you think about it for too long, but it's still such an awesome reveal of Rachel's big secret. I love it. Yeah, she's great. Mel Corbliss is also a great character. Total fan favorite. She plays the cello. She's this cool goth girl, and she's like the only one who's relaxed and doesn't force you to do her homework. That's cool. Leela Yadav also doesn't force you to do her homework, but she makes you play games with her inside the rec room. You play like darts and you play air hockey with her. And they're fine games, they're fine challenges, but she just is super annoying the whole time. She's like, oh yeah, I scored a point. Oh yeah, And I'm like, I just don't like her. Just her cheering for herself is really annoying. You do snack shop in her area, and that's a lot of fun. I really like that. That's probably like one of my favorites in terms of the, there's a lot of Nancy Drew games where you have to prepare food, but Snack Shop in Waverly Academy is probably one of my favorites. Izzy Romero, who's this really mean girl who's basically the queen bee of the school. She was well done. I don't like her because she's a meanie, but she is well done. She forces you to do her DNA puzzle, which is just a terrible puzzle. Nobody likes that puzzle. Also, kind of a torturous puzzle is the United States, where it's a map and you need to put every single state on the United States. So it's a 50-piece jigsaw puzzle, and you have to work from the outside in too, which is kind of a strange limitation. Paige, also the hall monitor, we never see her, but she really does give a sense of personality, even though she's basically there to just yell at Nancy. And then Nancy's roommate, Corrine, is just, she is, what do you call it? She's kind of a loser, and nobody likes her, and she's desperate to have best friends, but she doesn't get any. She's also kind of a stalker, too. One of the really cool aspects in this game is that we have like a phone line, and just everybody sends these cool gossip messages, and so much drama. Like, Izzy steals Leela's boyfriend. And then there's like this fake photo of Izzy hanging out with Corrine, like they're best friends, and people gossip about Nancy. It's just so cool. I really love that aspect of the game. Really makes these characters come alive. Nancy discovers a secret society is operating out of Waverly, and she uses their information. Basically, there's a lot of Edgar Allan Poe themed puzzles in this game, leading to the ending where Nancy finds a book of unpublished stories written by Edgar Allan Poe, and the culprit was actually after that the whole time. Kind of a cool plot twist that the culprit wasn't really going after all the valedictorians because the culprit wanted a scholarship. The culprit just wanted them to get out of the building so she could search the entire building and find this long lost treasure. So, Overall, definitely a great game. One of my favorite games in the series. I know I say that about a lot of Nancy Drew games, but it's definitely true about this one. I love the characters. I love the environment. Pretty much all of the puzzles are solid. Some of them not so good, so I just look up the solution as opposed to solving them every single time. Like we've got the piano puzzle, which just has way too many steps, and the climbing the tree puzzle, way too many steps, and then the plate, this like the spoons and forks puzzle, way too many steps. And then putting the Starburst tokens, yeah, and the orthographic fuse puzzle is okay too. But anyway, so one of my favorite games, not my favorite though, because there's a couple of, there are like a handful of puzzles which are kind of a pain because they're just too long. But other than that, love the characters, love the setup, definitely a great game. 9 out of 10. Hi everybody, I'm Michael. This is a 5-minute review for Nancy Drew number 22, Trail of the Twister, which is not one of the more well-liked games in the series. It's kind of bland is what people think. It's mostly just chores. None of the characters really stand out. Like Debbie is particularly boring. Sorry fans of Debbie. She just basically sits there all day and gives you chores. And she gives you this really long speech at the end of the game. It's like, great, that's good information to know, but there's a tornado on the way and Nancy needs to capture the culprit. Could you put off this long conversation for later? Really annoying at the end of the game. Scott's okay. He's just an angry, grumpy guy. Some people really like him. I'm surprised he's the favorite character of the game. I would have gone with Paw. Paw's a really nice character. I feel like he's the only one who's really genuine and feels like a real person. It's just tragic that his wife is dead and Nancy keeps asking him questions about his dead wife and he's pretending she's still alive. That was really rude and insensitive of Nancy. I wish we got more resolution to that, but instead the game ends with a joke that, haha, you know Paw, he's terrible at acting. We do know that? I just don't like the end of the game, man. Replayed the game recently. The ending is just sort of terrible. The like last day of the game is not so good. The rest of the game is fine. It's mostly chores. So it's wake up, you get assigned chores, then wake up, get assigned chores again, wake up, get assigned chores again. There's no real ongoing story, and I felt like the game really needed that. Even attempts at an ongoing story were messed up. So like on the second day of the game, you overhear Frosty and Debbie conspiring together. And Nancy ignores that until the end of the game. It's like, why couldn't she confront them right away? Yeah. But the game is sort of set up where like each character has a secret and you need to figure out the character's secret. And at the end of the game, that's basically how it's set up. Frosty's okay. I like the scene of him screaming, but other than that, he's full of himself. He's actually, I don't like the scene where he accuses Nancy of being incompetent. He's basically lying like a huge jerk to Nancy. I'm like, Frosty, you're not my friend anymore. Chase is a really friendly guy. I like him. He's another nice, positive guy, but he doesn't really stand out too much in terms of personality-wise. He's just generic friendly guy who's good with tools. And I think that's the problem because the characters don't really stand out and the story doesn't really stand out because there is no story. It's just chores and chores and chores. The story is that Nancy's helping these storm chasers. They're having a lot of trouble. And basically every day each person gives her a puzzle. And that's it. She has to fix things. Something's been sabotaged. Lots of things are sabotaged. It turns out that Scott, the team leader, he's secretly like dealing with Brooke Kavanaugh, who's running Brooke Kavanaugh. She's running the other storm chasers team. They have like a secret communication together. Frosty's big secret is that he is secretly taking pictures and selling them on the sly. Debbie thinks that's totally okay. She knows about it. Chase's big secret is that he's looking for oil everywhere. And yeah, there's just not much to say. If you don't like the puzzles, that's basically it for the game. There's not much. Driving around is fun. You have to catch mice, which is just a torturous, terrible puzzle. It would have been fine if you only had to do it once, but you have to do it like 4 times, and that's just no good. That's just really terrible. The tornado watch puzzle, not good. Don't like that one. Fixing the lines on the weather machines is okay. Yeah, you know, I don't want to sound mean. Moving the prairie dogs, not a puzzle I like either, but it's most people think this game is just bland and not very memorable. It's not like the puzzles are terrible and you scream, ah, they're bad, they're terrible, I hate this game. Besides for the mice one. The mouse problem puzzle really is terrible. But the others are just like, well, they're not great, but they're not terrible either. It's just, there's really nothing to this game besides puzzles. It definitely needed more story. It has enough characters. I wish the characters interacted or did stuff. Instead, you know, it feels like there's just a series of random events. So even when something happens, like Debbie goes, "Come on, we've got to go. There's a big storm head forming." It's like, where did that come from? And yeah, the end of the game is just where we have the culprit reveal. That's just kind of unpolished and feels like they're dumping a lot of exposition on you at once. Oh, I'm at the end of my 5 minutes. Okay, so definitely not a good game in the series. Just bland. I don't hate it, but I don't really like it either. 6 out of 10, 6 out of 10. That's sort of at the bottom edge. I mean, it's not like the games which are really terrible, like Shattered Medallion and Creature of Kapu Cave. It's sort of a step above those games, but it's not that much better than them. Just sort of bland and forgettable, like I said. Hi everybody, I'm Michael. This is a review for Nancy Drew Secrets Can Kill Remastered, which was released in between games number 22 and 23 of the Nancy Drew series. It's a remake of the first game. It is an okay remake. You know, if you were telling me, hey, we're remaking the first Nancy Drew game, I'd be great. Here's a list of 20 things which are wrong with the game that need to be improved. And it feels like the remake addressed like 2 of the problems and then ignored everything else and just left everything the same. So it does have a lot of the same problems as the original game, which is it's incredibly short, relies too much on brain teasers, which are scattered throughout the scenery, as opposed to actual character interaction, actual story, and puzzles. Yeah. One thing they did fix was the end of the game. The culprit at the end of the original game is terrible. Just some random person who came out of the middle of nowhere. This game has a different culprit. There is a really funny cameo appearance by the culprit from the original game. That was really good, too. Some of the things they changed in the remake, it felt like they weren't changing on purpose because they wanted to be different. It felt like, you know, more of the, what do you call it, the more questionable things in the original game. Like, in the original game, one puzzle, you break into the teacher's lounge by smashing through a window with a glass cutter. It felt like they decided to cut that out of this version of the game just because that was too violent. Instead, it's replaced with a puzzle of setting off a soda machine alarm, which, okay, makes sense. But, you know, I wish they'd, like, included a new puzzle for the sake of having a new puzzle rather than, well, we're just getting rid of something that's questionable in the original game. In the same way, Daryl was a drug runner in the original game. Well, they get rid of that because they don't want references to drugs in the game. Instead, he's selling top secret military information. Because, of course, he has access to that. What? That's weird. They did change the culprit, and yeah, that's good. So we sort of get like an additional puzzle at the end of stopping the culprit. And again, that feels like, well, in the original game, you stopped the culprit by using a gun. They didn't want Nancy using a gun, so they got rid of that puzzle. You know, does that make sense? Does that complaint make sense? They just tried to clean up the game and make it more G-rated, and it feels like that was more of the motivation behind changing some elements of the game, as opposed to actually doing things differently to try to improve things. Because other than that, they try to copy the original game, as much as possible. That's also a problem with the dialogue, because the dialogue in the first game was kind of bad, and they keep to most of the same dialogue, which I'm like, ugh. They got new voices for 3 of the 4 characters. It's like you guys could have done so much more and new, different dialogue because you've got new actors. But nope, let's just have them repeat the old lines. Okay, fine, whatever. Couldn't they have just reused the original voice recordings if that's the case? So most of the characters are the same. Daryl's the one who's changed the most. He was Nancy's police contact in the original. In this game, he's not. So he really has nothing to do. He feels far more removed from the story compared to everybody else. Daryl, he looks kind of hideous. The graphics for the other characters look fine. He looks pretty hideous. I'm sorry. And all he does is make weird comments and has awkward pauses. Just doesn't work. He had so much more personality in the original. I feel bad for Daryl. They introduced a new character who is Detective Beach, who's this really nerdy guy with glasses and a green striped shirt. And he's kind of fun. I mean, gives you something to do inside of Maxine's. I do love this game because I won a contest to be in this game. Her Interactive was having like a yearbook style photo contest where they wanted to put people's pictures in the game. And I won the contest. I was one of the 10 or 12 randomly selected winners. To this day, I'm still a little suspicious in the back of my mind. It's like, did I really get picked at random? Or did they purposely pick me because they've seen my YouTube videos and they knew who I was and they wanted to reward me in a sense? I don't know. Either way, I'm Mr. September, so my picture's in the game. So I really, really love this game just for that. And I always say it's my favorite game in the Nancy Drew series simply because of that. That makes me give it an 11 out of 10. But if I'm being honest, this game is probably just a minor improvement over the original game. There is that like symbols puzzle towards the end of the game to get a second videotape, which is actually feels like a brand new, different puzzle introduced for this game. That was good. Yeah. But if I'm being honest, it's not that much better than the original. It's probably like 1 point higher than the original. So what, like a 6 out of 10? 5 or 6 out of 10? Yeah, this should have been like twice as long, had way more stuff instead of trying to copy the original as closely as possible. I feel like that was this remake's downfall because the original game just had so many problems that needed to be fixed, and the remake basically lets all the problems stand. Hi everybody, Argolfump here with a 5-minute review for Nancy Drew Shadow at the Water's Edge, which is game number 23 in the Nancy Drew series. It's a very well-loved game. It's a fantastic game, actually. It's really good. I do have problems with the puzzles in this game. One of the puzzles, there's like 3 puzzles, well, maybe like 4 or 5 puzzles, which I take issue with. One of them is a meta puzzle, where we have to get these pictures from Yumi by doing specific actions, and it's not obvious what those actions are. Yeah, so there's definitely times when I play the game and I get stuck because I need 1 or 2 more pictures from Yumi and I have no idea what to do because there's no indication of what you do to get those. Let's see, the really long nonograms puzzle, terrible. The one at the end of the game, oh, terrible. Monster Sudoku puzzle's okay, it just takes forever, that's all. The portrait backing puzzle, also terrible. Origami puzzle's fine. The one puzzle, the tea ceremony puzzle, is okay. Figuring out your way through the subway is kind of a tough puzzle, but it's fine once you've got it figured out. And you know, it feels like this game is a bit too long, which sounds like a weird complaint, but it feels like there's I don't know, something needed to be cut from the game. Maybe the storyline with Savannah, although I kind of like Savannah. Maybe the EVS or the EMP or whatever, maybe that could have been cut from the game. There's a lot of conversations in this game, a lot of talking, and the characters say, "What do you mean?" over and over again. That phrase occurs at least 20 times in this game. It's crazy. The characters are fun. Yumi's a fun character. I like her. She's basically around to be funny. She forces you to do bento, and I'm okay with bento, but I know a lot of people think that's kind of a terrible puzzle. And I would agree. Sometimes when you get stuck with some bento puzzles, that's just, some of them are just terrible. Miwako's fine. She's kind of, I mean, she's basically a reserved character who doesn't show much personality and basically gets mad at Nancy. Nancy is super insensitive in this game, and she's constantly asking these people about their dead mother. So the story is that this ryokan is haunted by the ghost of Kasumi, who died here in a tragic accident and Nancy just keeps asking question after question about the dead mom to the obviously still grieving family. It's just rude and mean. I can't believe Nancy did that. The grandma is okay. I like the puzzles with her. She talks extremely slowly, though. Some people really, really hate that. And Rentaro, he's a fun character too. I really like him. He's fun. But like I said, there's a little bit too much talking in this game. I feel like they had reduced the conversations by like 10 to 20%. That probably would have been better, but on the other hand, most of the conversations are fun. The Savannah Woodham stuff is okay. I always seem to get stuck at the part where we need to find the hidden room where the mother died, because you have to like call Savannah, check out the rooms, and then check out the computer desk, and then call Savannah again. But there's also a puzzle with Savannah's assistant Logan where you have to call multiple times. It's just like one to two of those extraneous phone calls probably could have been removed. The entire game takes place at night, which is an interesting way of going about it. Gosh, I'm almost done. 1 minute left on my 5-minute review. Setting's really good. Super scary game. That's great. The pachinko parlor is a fun place. It really does show off a lot of the various places to see in Japan. Wish we kind of had more of that, but still fun. And just like I said, it's a good game. It's got a lot of the and the puzzle to get out of the room where you have to make those matching things. Terribly long puzzle. I feel like that's the problem with most of the puzzles I didn't like, was they're just terribly long. Even if you know the solution and you know what to do, it just takes forever to solve the puzzle. The endings is good. You can kind of choose whether or not to forgive the culprit. That's cool. I like the endings. And yeah, very dramatic story as well. But overall, it's a good game. It's got like those puzzles that I just don't like, and I feel like it's a little too long, which lends itself to me getting stuck or just running out of oomph in the second hour of playing. Was usually like a 3-hour game if you know what you're doing. So I give it like an 8 out of 10 because there are multiple puzzles which just make you want to throw your computer out the window. Hi everybody, I'm Michael. This is a 5-minute review for Nancy Drew number 24, The Captive Curse, which is, I think, a really good game in the series. I kind of like it better than Shadow at the Water's Edge. Shadow at the Water's Edge is great, but this one keeps all the scary stuff where Nancy's in a castle and there's a monster running around. I really like the characters in this one. Carl is funny, Lucas is great. So is Anya, and don't like Renata that much. She's mostly there to be creepy and mean to Nancy, and didn't like that much. And it felt like, why are you even here? Why are you one of the suspects, traveling storyteller? Whereas the other characters had more motivation, or they were closer tied to the story of Castle Finster. Carl is this inept guy who's the Burgermeister. He's just funny. I like him. He makes you play this game, Raid, and you could tell that the people who made this game are really proud of Raid and the various puzzles throughout this game. I actually think the monster game is better than Raid. Partway through the game, you have these phone calls that say the monster is attacking. It's really cool, those monster attacks. I like those scenes. Marcus is really hilarious too. He's the guy who technically hired Nancy. You do exploring in the woods, and you do exploring in hidden tunnels. Lots of exploration here at night, and it's creepy. But it's also fun. It's a little too easy to get lost. If you can't find the map, then you're gonna be stuck for a while. I like the hidden passageways too, like the hidden dungeons. Those are great. Basically, just a good environment, good story elements. Puzzles are pretty solid, and the characters are fine too. One big thing with this game, it sort of starts off with Nancy and her boyfriend having this really big fight, and some people really hate that. Some people really love it because they don't like Nancy's boyfriend. I thought it was a pretty good storyline, actually. I kind of like how Nancy and her boyfriend, it feels pretty realistic. And it's setting up for the next game, although I really wish that the next game had kind of mentioned that or gone along those lines or just continued it. But no, it feels like they just wanted a storyline with Nancy and Ned because Ned's going to be in the next game in the series. The environment's really cool. You learn a little bit about Germany, not too much. I do like exploring the Enigma machine, and oh wow, I'm only halfway through this. Yeah, I can't say like terrible things about this game, really. One complaint would be just too much dialogue, which is not bad. You can talk to everybody about everything if you want, but there's definitely, yeah, a bit too much dialogue. Castle Cast, that felt like sort of a weird detour, if that makes sense. A common complaint people have is that it doesn't address the original story of the legend, where like the original story was that the Freyhair's daughter, like she was captured. Who captured her and why? We never find out. Yeah, some people are really mad about that. It's definitely, yeah, I like when Lucas disguises himself as the monster. I like the ending is really dark, where the culprit kidnaps Lucas and then throws Nancy in a dungeon. It's also kind of cool that Nancy is sort of forced into wearing this disguise. Not a disguise, but it makes her look like the Freyhair's daughter, the original person who was kidnapped. That one puzzle to get the things out of Renata's bag is actually kind of a terrible puzzle. I don't like that. But nothing really stands out as a puzzle which I thought was super bad and didn't like, besides maybe getting lost in the woods, but that's fine. I think I'm running out of things to say. Maybe I'll just end this review early. Good game. I'd probably give it an 8 or a 9 out of 10. I really kind of enjoy it more than Shadow at the Water's Edge. Although, whenever I play it, I generally do skip like a third of the dialogue because the characters just talk too much. Mostly I just ignore Renata because, yeah, I feel like if Renata had been replaced with somebody else, that probably would have made the game maybe if it had been Lucas's father instead of Renata as the fourth character, that probably would have made the game better. But as it is, I do think it's a good game. It's a lot of fun. It's one of those games I'm pretty much always down to replay. So 8 or a 9 out of 10, that's how I would rank it. Hi everybody, I'm Michael. This is a 5-minute review for Nancy Drew number 25, Alibi in Ashes. I feel like they tried extra hard with this game because it's 25, so it's a milestone game, which is cool. So the big deal is that Nancy is in her hometown. This is the first game which actually takes place in Nancy's hometown. Can you believe it? And you get to play as all of her friends, Bess, George, and Ned, which is so cool. I really like it, although when you replay it, you notice that Bess, George, and Ned pretty much say the exact same things all the time. I'm like, oh man, that doesn't really lend itself to replayability when all the characters are so similar. But they do have different things, like the characters, like Tony acts differently around Bess, and Alexi acts differently around George. That sort of thing. Deirdre acts differently around Ned. That's it. So like each of your three characters you play as has their own specific suspect who likes them and is nice to them. The story is that Nancy has been framed for burning down the town hall, and her friends need to solve a bunch of puzzles, collect a bunch of evidence to prove Nancy's innocence. It's really cool. You get to meet all these characters, and the characters are so fantastic. Alexi is just so sarcastic and fantastic and wonderful. I love him. And especially love the second half of the game, as soon as Nancy gets let out of prison. He is so nice to her, just a complete change of personality, because he's got a really tragic backstory, which mirrors what's happening to Nancy pretty much exactly. So I like him. The two characters who are sort of villains are characters from the books. It's amazing because Deirdre Shannon is just a super annoying, terrible character in pretty much all the books that she appears in. But in this game, she is just so fantastic and memorable. She comes back for 2 more games in the Nancy Drew series. That's how great she's done. And she's constantly fighting with Bess. Bess is at the ice cream parlor just making mean looks at Deirdre, and Deirdre makes mean looks at her back. It's just great. I think it's fantastic. Also, Brenda Carlton. So she was an incompetent reporter slash villain rival from the 1980s Nancy Drew Case Files series. So she was a villain in a different Nancy Drew series. And she's not very memorable, but she's a lot better in this game. It's the same thing. One thing this game does well is it takes these terrible characters from the book series, actually makes them into real developed characters. That's great. Same with Chief McGinnis. I'm not saying he's a bad character in the books. I'm just saying his personality completely changes depending on how that particular author is feeling that day. And so it's a lot better in this game where he has a consistent personality all the way through. And he's kind of funny too. Like, he makes a bunch of puns about Pancake City. I really love the Pancake City jokes. And I kind of wish the game had more references to other games in the Nancy Drew series. The final character is Tony, who is running for mayor or something like city council. And she's mad because Nancy Drew constantly makes the city government look inept when Nancy solves mysteries, which is true. We have Nancy's dad. You have several phone calls with him. He's an okay character in this game. I like him. And the puzzles are fine. I wish there was a better way to hand off evidence between the various characters, because that is inefficient. Also inefficient is that you can't go from Bess to George, or Bess to Ned, or Ned to George. You have to, in order to switch characters, you have to go back to Nancy and then switch characters. So there's a lot of unnecessary phone calls to Nancy just to switch characters. And part of the problem is you'll be switching characters a lot because they have inefficient inventory sharing. It's like if Ned's the one character who's holding the glass vial, Ned's the only one who can solve that glass vial puzzle. Other than that, pretty well balanced game. Finding the evidence, pretty good structure in how things are figured out. I know one time I played this game, I got totally stuck. I tend to get totally stuck at the end because you need to look at a specific newspaper in Nancy's house. If you don't do that, you get stuck. And you need to look at the specific thing in the wall of Brenda's truck. If you don't do that, you get stuck. You basically find alibis for the other characters. I like checking on Deirdre's alibi. It's really weird that Ned takes Deirdre out on dates in this game. That's what they do to distract her. It's cool that you get to fingerprint everyone. That was really cool. And I did like the final third of the game, half to third of the game. Once Nancy gets let out, it feels like, oh, we're kind of playing a bonus game because you figure out who the culprit is, and then the story it keeps going, and it becomes you need to stop the culprit. It goes on for like an extra 15 minutes or so. I really liked that edge of the game. So oh my gosh, I'm over my 5-minute limit. All in all, definitely one of my favorite games in the series. I'd say like this is the high point of the series because I don't think the series was as good after this one, but more on that in my next video review. For now, I'll give this like a 9 out of 10. It's great. Hi everybody, I'm Michael. This is a 5-minute review for Nancy Drew number 26, Tomb of the Lost Queen. So in my previous review, I said game 25 is sort of like a high point for me. Starting with game 26, the series seems like it went on a downslide. I don't want to say mean things about the series because I like the Nancy Drew games, but game 26 onward, definitely not as good as the others. This game really, the dialogue in this game is so weird and confusing. We saw hints of that in like game number 23 where the grandma gives a long metaphor speech about a bird to explain how she feels about her daughter's ghost. And that's like the same sort of, that's like a standard thing they do in the games, starting with game number 26. We get like a long lecture. It's like, oh, well, how do you read hieroglyphs? Let me give you a long metaphor lecture about lions. And it's just, that's the dialogue. The dialogue just really, everybody's trying to be way too clever. Everybody's trying to speak in double talk and mixed metaphors and half statements. I just do not like it. So this is definitely the game where I feel like, wow, the dialogue took a major downturn. And Maybe that's in part because I don't like the characters in this game. I really don't like Jamila. She is like the extreme of saying weird things, and Nancy's just like, oh, okay, I'll just put up with it. And same with Abdullah. And the problem is there's a lot more dialogue in this than in previous games. Like, compare this to Treasure in the Royal Tower, or even Secret of Shadow Ranch. Way more talking, and it'd be fine if the dialogue was good, but like I said, the dialogue's kind of terrible. The one good thing about this game, which is really good, is that it's a new HD screen. That's nice. Much bigger screen. It's an HD. I like the new inventory setup. Yeah, definitely like how the new interface is. This game also is really confusing. It like starts you off in the middle of the story with John being attacked, and it's like, who's John? I got no chance to know him. And then he shows up again at the very end of the game. That's something I think is really cool, is that John is this character who's only on screen for like 5 seconds at most, but they went through the trouble of completely designing this character. That's good. Lily is a character. She is so annoying. She just starts off on the wrong foot, and then she spends the rest of the game just being just kind of sad and scared and worried of the curse. And I feel like she didn't get enough of a wrap up, because, you know, we learned she's the one who's responsible for like dumping a snake on Nancy's bed, trying to kill Nancy, and I wish we got a follow-up for that. Dylan Carter, he's an okay character. I mean, I think like his voice actor really makes the character come alive and makes it so much fun. But he disappears about halfway through the game. He also shows up randomly. It feels like his introduction and Jamila, they definitely needed like an introduction for those two characters. It really feels like all the characters needed to be introduced. Instead of just starting where Nancy already knows these people and their relationships, and you just have to figure it out as you go along. Professor Hotchkiss is in this game. She's funny. It feels like some of her jokes are a little forced and not as funny as they were in the previous ones. And most of this game is just puzzles and exploration, which is fine. It's not as good as like Curse of Blackmore Manor, where we find more hidden passageways. And in this game, we find like many hidden passageways, but I felt it was just done better in Curse of Blackmore Manor. And instead, it feels like, well, Nancy's just solving puzzles on this site. The hieroglyph puzzles really could have been done better. It was just a simple cryptogram puzzle, and you have to solve it over and over and over again, which is not fun. I've got so many questions about how the characters were able to explore these tunnels when Nancy's the one who opened the tunnels. And yeah, and then it just goes into weird territory where apparently Jamila is part of a centuries, even millennia old operation to find the lost queen. And that just felt like a weird left turn. It's like, okay, she goes from a crazy alien person to somebody who's been, I don't know. I just thought it was a weird left turn. The final culprit reveal was good. I felt like that was satisfying, at least. So yeah, overall, it's an okay game if you like exploration. I just don't like the dialogue, which really brings down the entire game for me. But exploration and puzzles are fine, although not as good as, say, like Curse of Blackmore Manor. So I'd probably give this game like a 6 or a 7 out of 10. Hi everybody, I'm Michael. This is a 5-minute review for Nancy Drew, number 27, The Deadly Device, and it's one of my favorites. I know a lot of people like to hate this game, but this is definitely one of my favorites. I like this game. I'd probably give it a 9 out of 10. The dialogue is okay. There are some dialogue points which aren't so good, but overall, I think the dialogue's fine. I like Deirdre Shannon. She's hilarious in this game. Mason is just... I don't really like Mason or Ellie that much. They're just sort of there, if you know what I mean. Like, Mason's funny the first time you talk to him, but then he's just... Yeah, he doesn't really do much towards, like, the final 3/4 of the game. Like, he gets into a fight with Gray, and then he gets like stuck on the Tesla coil, but he quickly gets ignored at that point because Victor shows up. The storyline is that Nancy is solving a murder mystery. Wow, that's really cool. Nico was murdered, and it's a cold case mystery, and Nancy is brought in to figure out what's happening. Ryan is okay. I feel like they tried too hard to make her the quirky, funny character, but she is the only person here who's like really legitimately nice and likes Nancy. Ellie just feels like she's asleep the whole time. Mason just hates everything. Gray really hates everyone and everything. So does Victor. Victor kind of hates everyone and everything. Just really nasty attitudes from most of the characters in this game. So that kind of brings it down. I do like a lot of the puzzles. I really like how it's a science-themed game, and we have a bunch of science-y puzzles. And basically, Nico left this long, complicated scavenger hunt, leading to like his secret research, and also a videotape of his murder. And that's a plot point which really confuses me. It's like, how does he have a videotape of his own murder? Did he know he was going to be killed? And then there's a puzzle getting the videotape, getting the video of the murder to the police, because there's a security system to stop anybody from getting the video out. It's like, did he want people to find this video or not? Because it seems like he didn't. But I do like the puzzles. The game does, some people argue, the game does come to a grinding halt when Nancy does a lot of the puzzle solving, because it's no character interaction. It's all just puzzle. There is a minor break where like the culprit knocks her unconscious and locks her in a room with no oxygen. That's a pretty exciting sequence, but yeah, I can definitely understand the complaint where it's like, oh boy, wow, what do we do with these characters now? Nothing, you're just solving puzzles. Final third of the game, elevator breaks down. That was exciting. You have to distract Victor. I like the puzzle to get the candy, although I feel like that one goes on for too long. I like listening to Nico's audio diary messages. The one puzzle of finding the stuff in the shredder is kind of a pain. You have an optional puzzle of finding a robot cat, putting all those pieces together. That's really cool. Like with Ryan, like I said, like I feel like they tried too hard to make her a fun, quirky character, especially with those gummy bears. Like sometimes those jokes come across as a little forced. That's all. I really like the puzzle of making the fingerprint, where it's like a couple of things that come together really well. Yeah, and gosh, I don't really want to go into spoiler territory, but at the end, the culprit just makes some really terrible decisions. Like the culprit knocks Nancy unconscious and puts her in a Faraday cage, then tries to electrocute her with the Tesla coil. But it's like, so they put her in a protective cage before turning on the electricity. That doesn't make sense. If your plan is to kill Nancy right away, why did you put her in a protective cage before electrocuting her? That doesn't make sense. It gives Nancy a chance to solve this really kind of tough puzzle. More than one puzzle in the game feels like you want to play through the game on junior mode first before playing it on senior mode, because some of those puzzles are tough. And we have a tough diagram schematic puzzle. So Nancy, basically, she puts up a lightning rod to direct the electricity away from her, and then the culprit runs into the room and gets electrocuted, which is a really stupid move on the culprit's part, because that's how the culprit killed Nico. Why did the culprit run into this room while the electricity was still going? The culprit was in the middle of trying to electrocute Nancy. It's just terrible decisions on the culprit's part all around. Like I said, one of my favorite games, probably the last game in the series, which I can point to and say, yeah, this is one of my favorites. So yeah, like 9 out of 10 or so. It's just kind of fun, even if all the characters are kind of mean and nasty. I can see why people don't like it, but it is one of my favorites. I like the science theme and the murder mystery, and the fun characters are great. Hi everyone, I'm Michael. This is a 5-minute review of Nancy Drew number 28, The Ghost of Thornton Hall. And I know this is a fan favorite game because it's a scary game. It's probably the scariest game in the series. Either this or Shadow at the Water's Edge. It depends on which one you think is scarier. But those are the two scariest games in the series by far. It has a dark atmosphere, really creepy stuff going on, lots of scary scenes with the ghost, and definitely the dark atmosphere where the characters are talking in riddles and just being dark and mysterious, which really fits well. It's just scary, man. So if you like scary games, this is definitely one for you. I'm not a big fan of scary stuff, to be honest. I feel like Shadow at the Water's Edge relied more on jump scares, whereas this one does have a lot of jump scares too, but they're mostly with the ghost. Charlotte, fire so red, night so black. Dear sweet Charlotte, please come back. Charlotte died in a fire a long time ago here on the island. And Jessalyn Thornton, who's a nice person that everybody likes, she disappeared here, and we're trying to figure out what happened to her. Nancy basically goes throughout the entire Thornton Hall, which is just decrepit, wrecked, terrible, and they're all still haunted by the ghosts of another fire like 100 years ago when a bunch of factory workers were basically they died here on a fire. And yeah, the family interplay, like all these family members kind of hate each other. Harper is she has mental stability issues. She has been in a mental institution, and she's really playing that up. And she's trying to torment her cousin Clara, who she hates. I don't think Wade has particularly strong feelings about Harper. Wade feels like the most normal character, like the one you'd most likely be friends with in real life. And I do like how he has a romantic subplot with Savannah Woodham. That's good. Clara is just sort of mean and supercilious the whole time. I don't like her. Addie, who you call, she's just kind of, I don't like Addie very much. She definitely adds, I mean, she's constantly scared and worried, and that fits it well. Same with Savannah, she's constantly scared and worried, and that fits it well. And even when you call Nancy's friends, Bess and Ned, they tend to be kind of scared and worried the whole time. And I feel like just too much of that same basic vibe from the characters of, we're scared and worried. This is a very scary case. So yeah, I got that. The setup of the game is fine. Like, Harper leaves a bunch of puzzles for Nancy to solve. And you just go up to her sleeping area and solve these puzzles. You find a note which has the puzzle, and you solve it. And yeah, you go into Charlotte's room, which is the room where Charlotte died. These puzzles are not too tough. I feel like the puzzles in the cemetery are a little on the tough side to know which places you use the plates and everything. That feels tough. Last time I played through the game, the to-do list was useless. Man, that really could have needed an upgrade. This is the game that introduces the fast combo feature, right? So fantastic. I really love that feature. I wish it was in all of the Nancy Drew games that just allowed you to skip through the dialogue that you don't want to hear. Really spooky atmosphere, pretty solid puzzles. Yeah, definitely a good game, just super dark. Colton is the fiance. I do not like him at all. I do not like him. I do not like his storyline. His storyline is that he had a fiance. He was going to marry her. Were they fiance or were they just dating? Anyway, but he gets a phone call from her. It turns out she was basically bribed to run away from his life forever. He is basically tricked into dating Jessalyn. And now he just wants to abandon Jessalyn and go back to his old girlfriend. And like, wow, that's a terrible thing to do when your fiance is missing. We find Jessalyn sort of towards the end of the game. And Jessalyn, I feel like her motivation doesn't quite make sense. It makes sense that she's trying to find out the truth about her family, but I don't know why she needed to pretend to be kidnapped in order to do that. Yeah, just she's trying to get this one piece of evidence from her mother. Her mother's got something from the night that... Actually, pretty much everybody's got something from the night that Charlotte died. Pretty much everything. Wade's got a paper, so does the mom, so does Colton. He has another paper as well. Running on the 5-minute thing. But yeah. Anyway, it's an okay game. Really just gothic, scary game, and that's really not my thing. I do like how the game has 3 different endings, and some of them are really dark. And in all 3 endings, we're told the ghost was just a carbon monoxide hallucination, and that feels like a bit of a cop-out. I did not like that explanation at all. Other than that, really solid game. I can see why people like it. I'd probably give it an 8 out of 10. 8 or a 9 out of 10. Scary games aren't my thing. And last time I played the game, I got really stuck, so it's not high on my list of favorites right now. Hi everybody, I'm Michael. This is a 5-minute review of Nancy Drew number 29, The Silent Spy, which is a good game in the Nancy Drew series, but it definitely has problems. There's been multiple times I played through this game and I just got really stuck trying to figure out what to do next. It feels like the organization was not as strong. The dialogue is not so good. It feels like somebody took the original script and cut like huge chunks out or switched things around, and so it doesn't really quite make sense. Yeah. Also super confusing just right off the bat, where you read this important letter about Nancy Drew's mom, who apparently Nancy's mom was a spy, and then they're bringing in Nancy Drew with information about how her mother died, but then there's immediately a double cross, and that was just a bit too much of an information dump at the start of the game. Nancy gets robbed, and then her contact Ewan just calls her. He's like, hey, I'll check with you later, bye. And then he disappears for like an hour, which I thought was terrible. Nancy is left to go to Moira, who is her mom's fellow spy, and Moira, as it turns out, is sort of the reason why Kate Drew died, because Moira brought her back for a top secret case. She lied to Kate Drew, saying she'd have constant protection when there was nobody there to protect her, and that's sort of what led to the death situation, at which we found out more about Nancy Drew's mother. Yeah, I wish there was more, but the game sort of changes focus, and it's more interested in the colony operation, where somebody is trying to release this deadly virus. They're basically trying to recreate the virus thing from 10 years ago, the one that Kate Drew stopped. They're just trying to reboot that, and Nancy's goal is basically figure out things and stop the virus. So she needs to find the formula for the virus and destroy it. She needs to find the scientist who created the formula, warn him so he goes away, and the villains won't be able to get the formula out of him. Yeah. And that basically becomes the focus, as opposed to finding out what happened to Nancy's mom. I kind of wish we had focused more on Nancy's mom, just a personal thing. Another storyline which is weird is that Moira gets kidnapped. The second time you meet her, first time you meet her face-to-face, people show up and they kidnap her. She just returns halfway through the game and acts like nothing's wrong and nothing's changed. Never tells you who kidnapped her or why. What was that? That was weird. Also about halfway through the game, there's this really annoying Scottish girl named Bridget. It turns out she's a spy in disguise, and she's Samantha Quick from Phantom of Venice, and that would have been really cool, except she sounds nothing like Samantha Quick. She acts nothing like Samantha Quick. It's just sort of a coincidence they have the same name. It was cool that, we have this character. It turns out she's somebody totally else in disguise. Whoa! That was cool, but Bridget was really annoying and so obviously like a spy in the first half of the game. It wasn't that much of a surprise to learn she's actually a spy. Ewan is Nancy's contact. He's got a great shirt, but just his dialogue is just not good. He definitely loves talking in double talk and not giving Nancy the answer she needs. Some of the puzzles in this game, just really hard to figure out what to do and get stuck. I don't like the puzzle of getting into Bridget's phone. The puzzle of unlocking the thing in her... the puzzle of finding those puzzle pieces inside her room. Really terrible. Yeah. And then the puzzle of like the Jabberwocky... I feel like that was weird and replaced at the last second because it didn't flow well. And Alex, an okay character who kind of helps Nancy, and it turns out, well, he's sort of being blackmailed into helping Nancy. But he's really there to rob Nancy. He's forced to do it because some bad guys have his sister held hostage. I feel like that could have been done better. Yeah, the ending's okay, except the culprit reveal is terrible. The culprit's motive is like, hey, why are you trying to destroy the city? Why are you trying to murder a bunch of people with these biological bombs? And the culprit says, because I can, and that's all the explanation we get. But it was exciting at the final third, where I liked the flashbacks to Nancy's mom. Those were great. I did like the exciting sequence sort of at the end where somebody's firing at Nancy and then she gets caught in a trash compactor. Those are really cool, like intense, exciting sequences. But yeah, I really did like also ziplining into Zoe's apartment. That was really cool. But other than that, yeah, this game really does have its problems. I'd probably give it like a 7 out of 10. I did not like it that much. It's too easy to get stuck. The plot is just kind of all over the place. Like, Moira's kidnapped, and that totally gets ignored. Yeah, and it was cool how Nancy got those threatening messages from the evil group that killed her mother. That was kind of cool, too. But, this game, which should have been all about Nancy's mother, just turned into this weird spy. I don't know. Phantom of Venice did a much better job with all the spy stuff. That's all I feel. All right, I'm going over my limit, and all I'm doing is complaining, so I'm going to end this video now. Bye. Hi everybody, I'm Michael. This is a 5-minute review of Nancy Drew number 30, The Shattered Medallion. Oh my gosh, is this a terrible game. One of the worst games in the Nancy Drew series, by far. None of the dialogue makes sense. It's all terrible. Oh, I've complained about other games where the characters just talk in riddles and half-speaks and weird metaphors and just really long, boring conversations about nothing. That's this game. This game desperately needed a rewrite because every character talks that way. None of the dialogue makes sense. It just all comes across as really stupid. I'm sorry, this is mean. I'm sorry. Also, the culprit reveal, just like the previous game, Silent Spy. Culprit reveal, terrible. What's the culprit's motivation? Who knows? The culprit says that they want revenge. Making you pay for your betrayal is what the culprit says. Even though Nancy has never betrayed the culprit at any point in the game. Makes no sense whatsoever. Especially when you consider that the start of the game is that Nancy, hey, guess what? Nancy and George are on a reality TV show, which should have been a really cool premise, but it ends up being super boring because the competitions are dumb things like finding flowers. Yeah, and then pretending to pan for gold and solving word puzzles. We have a word search. And there's like this canoeing challenge, which would have been really cool if you were racing against other people, but it's not. It's, well, we have this canoe race and you need to press the 5 buoys in a specific order. And that's it. That's Another puzzle is like playing with the turtle, the back of the turtle. You need to spell out a message on a turtle. Okay. Another thing that's not good is that's all scripted, so it doesn't really matter what you do or how well you do in any of the competitions. You're going to lose the first 3 rounds. And there's nobody else around. Nancy is alone by herself when she's solving these puzzles. But somehow the invisible people there manage to beat you to the big prize. So it's just, ugh. Yeah, it's not good. It's not good. Definitely could have done a lot better with the reality show aspect. It's just super boring. The characters are not good, so mainly because they talk so weird and say such strange things. That I feel like if the characters had been more normal, it would have been fine, but I can't really understand what any of them saying, besides for the fact that Patrick's stupid. That's basically it. Curie's mean and sarcastic. That's as much as I got out of her personality. Lena, sort of the same way, too. She's really mean and sort of a cheater, and completely disappears for a good portion of the game. At the start of the game, during the first challenge, George falls off a rope bridge because somebody sabotaged it, and that never really gets explained. Why did the culprit try to kill George? Never explained. Just forget about it. Just pretend it never happened. Sonny June is in this game. I love his voice. I love his character design. he still talks weird and funny like everybody else. It has a lot of good jokes, but they could have been funnier and it could have been much better. Yeah, a lot of his jokes are just so dumb. Just the dialogue. Like, if we took this exact same game and just rewrote the dialogue so it all made sense, nothing else changed, just the dialogue, that would make this game so much better. That's how terrible all the dialogue is. I really want to like Sonny, but I can't because he's just not good in this game. Well, he's probably the highlight of the game because all the other characters are pretty terrible. Bess, we know Bess from other games. She's not very good in this one. George spends all this game asleep after falling off a cliff, which is fine. She can rest after falling off a cliff. And then the storyline is just dumb because it turns out that Sonny is secretly hijacking this reality show competition to create an alien compass. So he gives everybody their own challenge, and they all have to, like, it's dumb. And there's an alien. Oh gosh, it's just so stupid. I'm sorry. This is a terrible game. We don't even get to see any of the aliens either. It's like, do the aliens exist? Who knows? Who cares? It's yeah, just all in all, just sort of a terrible game. I'm sorry. Game number 30 should have been something way better. This game had so much potential with the reality show angle and Sunny June taking over a reality show. How awesome could that have been? But no, it's just stupid alien scavenger hunt. Nobody says anything that makes sense, and the reality show doesn't matter. So, wow, like a 2 out of 10? One of the worst games of the series, definitely. Yeah, we sort of have like a 3-way tie. No, this or Ransom of the Seven Ships. It's got better graphics than Ransom of the Seven Ships. Yeah, slightly better than Ransom of the Seven Ships, but this is still pretty just awful. Yeah. Hi everybody, I'm Michael. This is a 5-minute review for Nancy Drew, Labyrinth of Lies. It's the 31st game in the Nancy Drew series. I really wanted to like this game. The first time around, I loved it. I love the ancient Greece theme. I love all the puzzles that deal with ancient Greece. So they're really clever. It's like somebody took a list of the myths and just was like, let's turn each one of those into a puzzle. And let's do like the entire Greek underworld and fill it with these mythology puzzles. That's really clever and cool. And I like exploring the underworld area, but people really hate that, actually. Lots of complaints around this game center around that underworld area, which is just completely like devoid of characters. It's just puzzle after puzzle after puzzle. If you don't know the myths, they just come across as like weird puzzles. Even if you kind of know the myths, they're not really relevant to like the actual story. They're just there so Nancy can have puzzles to solve. It's weird that this is all underground in a play. So does the audience get to see this? No, not really. So what's with these elaborate sets that the audience never gets to see? Why is there real fire on these sets? Just there wasn't enough thought put into it. I think if these sets had been backstage rather than underground, that would have helped. Probably. Yeah, Thanos lives in the underground area, but like you rarely see him. He's gone for most of the game. I don't like Thanos as a character. He's just supposed to be mean and creepy. I don't really like Gregor as a character. He's kind of interesting and fun, but he's sort of like self-absorbed and his jokes don't work. I feel like a lot of the jokes in this game, we're supposed to have a lot of jokes. I feel like they really don't work. I'm sorry. So like on the computer, you can listen to the theater troupe. You can listen to them rehearse. And it's like an hour of just them rehearsing. And it's like, we have a 2-minute joke about them talking in robot voices as a chorus, which doesn't work. It's like, why is that even in the game? Gosh. Yeah, and this game, I mean, it has the same problem with the dialogue as some of the other Nancy Drew games. Like, you know, game number 26 or game number 30, where the characters are just talking in half sentences and extended metaphors and half truths and mysteries, and it's supposed to be mysterious and intriguing, and it's not. I just straight up don't like it. I don't understand what the characters are saying. Last time I played the game, I must have played through backwards because none of the story was making sense. Things were happening all in the wrong order. And I just couldn't understand what was going on and what I'm supposed to do next, which is sad because I really do like the puzzles and that entire underground puzzle area is good. But yeah, just what you have to do in order to trigger parts of the story just don't make sense, really. Like, you need to visit Niobe from a certain direction at a certain point to trigger a scene with her and Thanos. No indication that there's a scene with her and Thanos going on there. Yeah. Gosh, in the final third of the game, like, Nancy gets captured and trapped in a cage, and then she solves a bunch of more puzzles in that underground area. That's good, but some of those puzzles, wow, they just knocked me down, and I got so stuck I had to use the hints, and the hint system was not helpful for solving those puzzles. Oh my gosh, not helpful at all. Just trying to decipher the hints. What the hints were trying to say was like a puzzle in itself, especially the color sliding puzzle. Whew, not good. The other slider puzzle where you have to match names and symbols, that's a terrible puzzle. Nobody really likes that one. There's a museum area, which is fine. The museum in Secret of Scarlet Hand was honestly a lot better. The puzzles there are okay. Like another example, like one of the puzzles you have to call the Hardy Boys for in order to get a book. And it's not obvious that's what you're supposed to do. And the story is that we have these people that are putting on a play right near the opening of the museum, and it turns out our culprit is stealing museum pieces and swapping them with fakes, and they're planning to do the big switch during the middle of the play. And Nancy figures this out. Oh man, I'm almost 5 minutes in. I didn't even get to talk about all the characters. Yeah, well, I talked about most. Anyway, not a good game. I'm sorry. I really wanted to like it, but I feel like if they redid all the dialogue in this game, it'd be a lot better. And if it's more obvious what to do and you could play it in like the story where it made sense, that would be good. Final third of the game's fine, I guess. I do like the big like plot twist at the end. That's okay. Oh my gosh. And some of the puzzles, like the gods puzzle at the end, that's just terrible too. So get rid of some of the terrible puzzles. Let's have the story, let's have the dialogue make sense and have the story be more structured so we actually know what we're supposed to do for the story. That's how you would improve this game, because I really want to like it, but I just can't. So 6 or a 7 out of 10. That's definitely not that good. Sorry. Hi everyone, I'm Michael. This is a 5-minute review for Nancy Drew, Sea of Darkness, the 32nd game in the Nancy Drew series, which is a really good game. It came after some kind of bad games. Labyrinth of Lies wasn't so good, neither was Silent Spy. Shattered Medallion was just a mess. I really wanted to like Labyrinth of Lies and Silent Spy, but they were kind of confusing last time I played them. In contrast to the 3 games that came before this one, it is fantastic. It makes so much sense. The story is so awesome. The characters don't talk like weirdos the entire time. I love the dialogue. I love the song, The Word I Couldn't Keep. The story feels more like an actual Nancy Drew story, like one of the classic games. Nancy needs to solve a series of puzzles to find an ancient treasure. Whoa! You know what games also have that storyline? Hey, Secret of Shadow Ranch, Treasure in the Royal Tower, Curse of Blackmore Manor, and Message in a Haunted Mansion. All 4 of these games, which are classic games that people really love, same story with this one. In this particular case, there's a bunch of clues to find a treasure here in Iceland, and they mostly center around this ship called the Hirlakide. It recently crashed into the harbor. The man who is supposed to be in charge of it, Magnus, is missing. He's been kidnapped by the culprit. So Nancy needs to find the treasure, and it basically ties into the kidnapping, right? She needs to find Magnus by finding the treasure and solving all sorts of old puzzles, and they're great. Most of these puzzles are really solid puzzles. I can't think of many puzzles where I go oh, those are terrible and they're not good. The Tora Mortar puzzle is pretty tough and hard to understand. Also, the the music Combs puzzle is super tough on senior detective mode, really. But the rest of the puzzles, they're all really solid. Oh yeah, the lion coin puzzle, that's one I don't like so much. But that's a very short puzzle, so it's not that bad. It's very short and easy. Um, yeah, other than that, lots of puzzles, and they're all really solid. The puzzles work, the story works, the characters are great. I love all the characters in this game. I love Soren. He is funny. He complains that everybody in town hates him. He kind of leans on that complaint a bit too much, but other than that, he's really funny and energetic. I love the storyline with Nancy's boyfriend, Ned. Some people really hate it. I thought it was great. Ned calls 3 times in this game. Like the first time, he's upset because she kind of forgot about their anniversary. But the third time, he has this big love confession, and it's really sweet. I like it. I thought it was funny. He has a roommate who's funny. Not to say that it's funny Ned confesses he loves his girlfriend. That was not a joke. Sorry. Other characters, Elizabeth, I feel like she is probably the worst of the characters. She's a little bland, but she does have an interesting story. And her big secret is kind of cool too. I don't want to give spoilers, but the reveal, I'm like, yeah, I like it. I don't like the build up to the reveal, which is basically Nancy's like, hey, it's the end of the game. I'm going to reveal your secret now. It's basically, okay, why didn't you do that an hour ago, Nancy, if that's what it takes to figure out her secret. Gunnar is really funny, and he's just an interesting, fun character. I like Gunnar. He's just this giant man, and Dagny's the final character. She's really, like, mean and sarcastic, a great boss. Most of her lines are hilarious. She's the first LGBTQ character in the Nancy Drew universe, so that's pretty cool. That we kind of get like text messages mentioning the fact that she had a wife. Yeah, I really do like the end of the game with Dagny, where she leaves this message with Nancy. I like how they wrapped up her story. Magnus is at the end of the game where Nancy finds where he's been kidnapped. He's being held hostage in the caves by the culprit, because the culprit thinks that Magnus knows where the treasure is, when Magnus doesn't. Magnus is missing a few of the clues which Nancy gathers over the course of her investigation. But even though Magnus is only on screen for a relatively short period of time, you get a sense of his personality and how happy he is, and it feels like he's really learned a lot about his mistakes. That's good. You can choose whether to forgive the culprit or not. That's an interesting decision to change the end of the game. Alex is a character, a phone contact, and she's a lot of fun. She's hilarious, and she does lead to like a series of puzzles in the lighthouse, and I thought all the lighthouse puzzles were really solid. We have the lights puzzle, that's fine. We've got the numbers puzzle, that's fine. I mean, we've got the triangle like Sudoku puzzle, which I think is fine too. I know some people think, oh my gosh, those puzzles are terrible, but I actually like them. Maybe there's a few too many puzzles like Sudoku in this game, but we have a couple in the hold. So one of the things Nancy does is she has to like find all these gears and put them into place, and then she also has to find all these picture things, these picture pieces, and put them into place. Oh my gosh, I went over my 5-minute time limit. So really good game. I did say I love the song in this game, right? So yeah, definitely a lot better than the games which came directly before it. Probably like an 8 or a 9 out of 10. Really solid. It was good. I'm glad we got this game. Hi everybody, I'm Michael. This is a 5-minute review for Nancy Drew number 33, Midnight in Salem. People really hate this game. This game has gotten a lot of negative reviews, and I can see why. I don't know, if you compare it to the other Nancy Drew games, then it's kind of terrible. There's way too much talking in this game, especially in like the first 2 hours of the game. It's just non-stop talking and no puzzles whatsoever. Like there's a simple maze puzzle, and then like an hour later we get like the key puzzle to open up the judge's door. And then it's like an hour later before anything else happens because the characters just talk and talk and talk. Somebody needed to just take this script and cut out huge chunks of it. Yeah, once the Hardy Boys show up, the game does get a little better, although I don't like the second day of the game where most of the investigation is asking people what their alibis are. It's like, oh my gosh, more talking. Talk to everyone. That's a puzzle, and we have to talk to everyone about 3 different things. And the game's like, hey, we've got 3 different puzzles. It's like, no, it's talk to everyone about everything. And I was like, oh, I'm so glad that you can click to skip the dialogue in this game. The final day of the game is where things really come together and start to get interesting. We start having like puzzles regularly. They have some big revelations, which I feel like not all of them quite worked, but I do like how we have big revelations. They basically tried to give every character a big revelation is what they did. Some of them work, some of them don't. Very dramatic at the end of the game where our heroes are going through the Hathorn house and they have to solve just a bunch of puzzles. I really like the Hardy Boys and Deirdre Shannon in this game. It really helps that they have the same people who've been doing their voices for all the other Nancy Drew games. So it felt more like a Nancy Drew game because we had these returning voice actors. Nancy Drew has a new voice actress. I thought she did fine. Some people don't like it. Some people want the original voice of Nancy Drew back, but I think Brittany did a perfectly fine job as the new Nancy Drew, so I actually like that. Problem is just there's way too much talking in this game. Not enough gameplay for the first, 2 hours or so. I do like how we have a bunch of extra characters just wandering around in the background. Really made it feel like the game was real and immersive. Yeah, some of the graphics, I really love the scenery. The scenery is good, but some of the characters just look kind of terrible. I'm sorry, Tegan. Sorry. And Deirdre Shannon as well. You can kind of tell it's clearly Deirdre and Tegan were the exact same character. They just, changed the face and makeup a little bit and said, hey, guess what? We're done. And neither one is particularly detailed. We get a lot of weird close-ups of Deirdre too because she follows you for most of the game. It's like, ugh. And the game just makes you wait a long time before Lauren shows up. Lauren's a pretty good character. The extra stuff in the game, there's really not a lot of extra stuff. There's 2 things. You can make potions. You could call it potions. You could just call it tea. Making tea in Lauren's shop. Or making pumpkins in Tegan's area. And that's basically it. Everything else is just, it's a very structured game. You can't do things in any order you want. It's not like Curse of Blackmore Manor where we've got 12 different puzzles and you can solve them in any order you want. Nope, this one is very, very structured. Do things in a very specific order and lots of just tons of talking. I feel like if this had been the first game in a new series, not a Nancy Drew series, but the first game in a totally new series, it would have fared better and people would have given it more benefit of the doubt. The fact that it took them 4.5 years to make this game and it constantly got delayed at least 3 times, that sort of built up a lot of hatred for this game before the game had even been released. I don't have enough time to talk about all the characters. Yeah, the ending of the game is fine, although it's just they just talk way too much. We're confronting the culprit and I'm falling asleep because it's 20 minutes of talking about every single thing and it's just ugh. So yeah, like I said, I feel like it would have been okay if this was the first game in a new series, but it's not. It doesn't follow too much. It doesn't fit in with the other Nancy Drew games that much. Definitely needed way more puzzles. The story was solid. It felt like if this had been developed into a mini series for the TV show, that's sort of it. That's sort of what it feels like. So I mean, that would have been fine, but yeah. 5 or 6 out of 10. I don't think it's the worst game in the series. There are other games that are more actively bad. This game just has the one problem where everybody talks way too much. That's really the only thing that I feel is really holding it back. Also the first half of the game where there are no puzzles too. But other than that, and some of those graphics too. Yeah, I mean there are reasons to not like this game, but I don't feel like it's that terrible. I don't hate it as much as other people seem to hate it. Yeah. So, I mean, it's bad. I like it more than the Shattered Medallion and well, not as much as Creature of Kabuki, but more than Shattered Medallion and Ransom of the Seven Ships. So that's where I'd place it. I'd place it in like the bottom 4 games in the series, but not at the very bottom. It's not that bad. All right, those are my thoughts. Bye.